Feeling a mix of embarrassment and disappointment, Yuyudo suggests that Suzuno should simply approach Ayato and ask him herself. However, Suzuno hides her face in her hands, admitting that she is far too bashful to speak directly to the person she likes. This leaves Yuyudo to quietly wallow in the realization that while he hoped to be the person she loved, he is merely a bridge to his brother. Suzuno Yuuki, Yuyudo Kujo's longtime childhood friend, asks to speak with him in private after school. As they stand alone in an empty classroom, Yuyudo is overcome with nervous excitement. He begins to wonder if being called to such a classic setting by a girl can only mean one thing: a long-awaited romantic confession. Suzuno appears visibly flustered, blushing intensely as she struggles to find the right words. She starts to stammer through what sounds like a heartfelt declaration of her feelings, calling out Yuyudo's name with a shy expression. Watching her, Yuyudo's heart races as he mentally prepares himself for her to admit that she has feelings for him. The romantic atmosphere is abruptly shattered when Suzuno finally manages to finish her sentence. Instead of confessing her love for Yuyudo, she asks if his perfect twin brother, Ayato, is free this coming weekend. Yuyudo is struck with a sudden wave of dejection, realizing that he has once again been overshadowed by his superior brother and has completely misinterpreted her intentions. Yuyudo stands alone with his thoughts, spiraling into a deep sense of self-loathing. He laments the fact that he is constantly losing to his perfect brother, Ayato, in every aspect of life. Feeling completely pathetic, he realizes he never stood a chance with Suzuno, the girl he likes, and has been relegated to the role of a mere middleman for his brother's romantic prospects. Despite the emotional weight of the situation, Yuyudo maintains his composure as Suzuno's friends arrive to find her. He gives Suzuno the answer she was hoping for, informing her that he believes his brother is free this coming Sunday. Suzuno is immediately overcome with joy, her eyes widening in excitement as she realizes she might actually get to spend time with her crush. With the information she needs, Suzuno prepares to leave with her friends, her face lit up with a brilliant and genuine smile. She waves goodbye to Yuyudo, thanking him enthusiastically for his help. While Suzuno walks away feeling triumphant and hopeful about her future with Ayato, Yuyudo is left standing there, forced to endure the painful contrast between her happiness and his own heartbreak. As Yuyudo dejectedly walks down the hallway, he is forced to overhear Suzuno's friends gossiping about him. They callously point out how little he resembles his dear brother, Ayato, expressing shock that they are even related. Their harsh comments conclude that while Ayato is super handsome, Yuyudo simply doesn't compare, leaving him completely humiliated and feeling more isolated than ever before. Yuyudo reflects on the painful reality that it was obvious Suzuno would prefer his twin brother. He acknowledges that Ayato is too outstanding in every way from sports to academics, making them look nothing alike despite being twins. This constant comparison leaves Yuyudo feeling pathetic and defeated, trapped in a shadow he can't seem to escape. As Yuyudo walks home, he is forced to endure the whispers of other students. He overhears girls marveling at how different he is from his super handsome brother, concluding that the two are completely incomparable. While the words sting, Yuyudo internally struggles with a stubborn part of himself that refuses to give up, even when he knows he cannot compete against his brother's perfect image. Yuyudo's somber walk is suddenly interrupted by a voice calling his name from across the street. He is startled to see a stylish blonde woman leaning against a large motorcycle parked on the curb. She waves to him with a bright, welcoming smile, appearing as a bold and unexpected presence in his otherwise bleak and lonely evening. The woman, dressed in a white off-the-shoulder sweater dress, presents a striking contrast to Yuyudo's current mood. Completely taken aback by her arrival and her friendly greeting, Yuyudo stops in his tracks. Looking shocked and sweating slightly from the surprise, he asks her exactly what she is doing there, clearly confused by this sudden and mysterious new development. Yuyudo Kujo clenches his fist in silent frustration, finally forcing himself to accept a painful truth. His childhood friend and first love, Suzuno, is actually in love with his twin brother, Ayato. He feels completely defeated, realizing that his feelings have been overshadowed by his brother's presence once again. Yuyudo reflects on his relationship with his perfect twin, noting the staggering gap between them. Despite being twins, Ayato is so outstanding in every field from academics to popularity that Yuyudo feels they are nothing alike, viewing himself as a mere, degraded version of his superior sibling. While walking home and wallowing in his deep-seated inferiority complex, Yuyudo's thoughts are suddenly interrupted by a voice calling his name. He is shocked to find Yuuki Kano, Suzuno's fashionable older sister, waiting for him on her motorcycle after finishing her university classes early. Noticing Yuyudo's gloomy expression, Kano immediately picks up on his lack of cheer. Although Yuyudo keeps his heartbreak secret, Kano doesn't let him stay dejected for long. She hands him a spare helmet and playfully asks if he's ready to go, whisking him away from his self-pity for an unexpected ride. Kano drops a bombshell on the stunned Yuyudo by declaring that they are going on a date. She is determined to lift his spirits, even as he stands there completely caught off guard by her sudden and playful forwardness. Yuyudo tries to play off his dejection, insisting he isn't depressed, but Kano isn't buying it. She declares it her personal mission as a big sister to cheer him up and commands him to climb onto the motorcycle immediately. After putting on his helmet, Yuyudo finally caves and asks where she is taking him. Kano keeps him in suspense, playfully shushing him and promising that he'll find out exactly where they are going once they arrive at the secret location. As they prepare to take off, Kano gives him one final instruction to hold on tight. A flustered and confused Yuyudo is left with no choice but to follow along as they speed away together, leaving his school troubles behind. Kano shocks Yuyudo by announcing that they are going to pick out her new underwear. She delivers this unexpected news with a playful blush and a confident smile, catching him completely off guard. To drive her point home, Kano lowers the neckline of her sweater to give Yuyudo a glimpse of her black lace bra. She teasingly asks for his opinion on it, further escalating the intensity and awkwardness of their outing. Yuyudo is instantly paralyzed by Kano's extreme boldness, reacting with an expression of pure, wide-eyed shock. The situation has moved far beyond the boundaries of a typical social interaction, leaving him sweating and speechless. Despite Yuyudo's obvious distress and embarrassment, Kano continues her provocative behavior with a cheerful laugh. Her unconventional and aggressive method of cheering him up leaves Yuyudo completely overwhelmed by her relentless teasing. Yuyudo is left reeling by Kano's bold suggestion to go shopping for her underwear, thinking to himself that such a scenario is completely impossible for a high schooler like him to handle. He panics at the thought of Suzuno finding out, convinced that his reputation would be utterly destroyed. In a desperate attempt to steer the conversation elsewhere, he abruptly notices a nearby cafe that roasts its own beans and suddenly claims a frantic, overwhelming need for a cup of coffee. Kano playfully goes along with his sudden caffeine craving, and the two head inside the establishment. While Yuyudo initially feels a sense of relief at avoiding the underwear shop, he quickly realizes he may have jumped from the frying pan into the fire. He looks around in shock, noting that the cafe is an intimate space filled almost entirely with romantic couples, further heightening the awkwardness of his date with Suzuno's older sister. A cheerful waitress arrives at their table to take their order, interrupting Yuyudo's internal spiral. Still feeling out of place and hoping to keep their stay as brief as possible, Yuyudo quickly requests a simple hot coffee. Kano agrees and orders a coffee for herself as well, thanking him for the recommendation. However, her attention is quickly captured by a specific section of the menu that makes Yuyudo's heart race for all the wrong reasons. With a radiant and excited smile, Kano points out a special item on the menu specifically designated for pairs. Disregarding Yuyudo's desire for a quick and inconspicuous exit, she enthusiastically orders the giant parfait intended for couples to share. Yuyudo is left wide-eyed and speechless as Kano leans in with joy, fully embracing the romantic theme of the dessert and ensuring their time together is anything but a quick coffee break. Yuyudo is thrown into a state of total panic and disbelief when he realizes exactly what Kano has just ordered. He blushes furiously as he shouts in surprise, unable to believe she actually chose the giant parfait special for couples. For Yuyudo, the order feels like a social catastrophe, as the dish's name alone carries romantic implications that he is far from ready to handle. Noticing his intense distress, Kano offers a cheerful and somewhat nonchalant apology. She winks and clasps her hands together, explaining that she simply had a sudden, overwhelming urge to try the special dessert. She admits that because Yuyudo was right there with her, she didn't give the couples-only label much thought and just placed the order on a whim. When the giant parfait finally reaches their table, it lives up to its name, appearing as a massive and elaborate tower of sweets decorated with fruit, whipped cream, and hearts. Kano is absolutely captivated by the sight, her eyes sparkling with pure excitement as she prepares to dive into the treat. The sheer scale of the dessert only serves to highlight the spectacle they are making in the quiet cafe. As they begin to share the dessert, Yuyudo's anxiety peaks as he realizes they have become the main attraction for the other patrons. While Kano happily enjoys the delicious treat, Yuyudo sits stiffly, mortified by the fact that everyone is staring at them. To make matters worse, he overhears nearby customers whispering about how lovely they look as a couple, leaving him trapped in a moment of peak public embarrassment. Kano scoops up a portion of the giant parfait and holds the spoon out across the table, insisting that Yuyudo give it a try. Though Yuyudo stammers out a weak protest and attempts to decline, Kano completely ignores his hesitation, playfully telling him not to be shy as she feeds him directly. Unable to dodge her persistence, Yuyudo takes the bite and slowly chews. Despite his overwhelming embarrassment at being hand-fed in a crowded cafe, he is forced to admit that the dessert is genuinely delicious. His reluctant praise brings a bright, triumphant smile to Kano's face as she celebrates getting him to enjoy it. Gazing at him with a warm and affectionate expression, Kano gently points out that he finally seems to have cheered up a bit. Her perceptive observation catches Yuyudo completely off guard, causing his face to flush even deeper as he realizes how carefully she has been monitoring his mood throughout the entire outing. Kano generously tells him he can eat as much of the parfait as he'd like, but Yuyudo flatly deadpans that he has no intention of having any more. Completely disregarding his refusal, Kano merrily interprets his resistance as mere embarrassment, handing him his own spoon with a laugh while a flustered Yuyudo exasperatedly yells, asking if she is even listening to a word he says. While sharing their giant dessert, Kano shifts the tone of the conversation to something more personal. Leaning on her hand with a gentle smile, she looks at Yuyudo and asks him how he has truly been doing lately. Her genuine interest encourages Yuyudo to open up about the thoughts that have been weighing on him. Yuyudo gives a dejected response, admitting that things have been so-so for him recently. He quickly reveals the root of his unhappiness, confessing that he feels he can't possibly compare himself to his twin brother. Even in this supposedly cheerful moment, the shadow of Ayado's perfection continues to dominate Yuyudo's self-image. Kano listens intently as Yuyudo continues to dwell on his insecurities. She points out a recurring pattern in their conversations, noting that Yuyudo mentions Ayado constantly. She observes that he seems to perpetually measure his own worth against his brother, as if every aspect of his life is an unfavorable comparison to Ayado's success. Faced with Yuyudo's persistent self-deprecation, Kano's playful demeanor disappears. She looks directly at him with a disappointed pout, telling him bluntly that she doesn't think his habit of constantly comparing himself to his brother is right. Even as Yuyudo tries to defend his mindset, Kano makes it clear that she finds his lack of self-worth problematic and refuses to support it. As they walk away from the cafe, Yuyudo has a sudden and startling realization. He stops in his tracks and asks Kano-sen if her intention from the very beginning was actually just to get that special parfait. He looks at her with a mix of surprise and suspicion, wondering if his emotional distress was merely a convenient excuse for her to visit the dessert shop. Kano-san doesn't even attempt to hide her true motivations, confirming with a cheerful and unbothered smile that the parfait was indeed her goal. She playfully explains that she had to keep her plans a secret. She notes that if she had been upfront about wanting a giant dessert from the start, Yuyudo likely would have refused to go with her. Confronted with her blunt logic, Yuyudo is forced to face a hard reality. He reflects on his own personality and admits to himself that she is absolutely right. He acknowledges that if the invitation had been presented as a simple trip to a cafe for a couples-only parfait, he almost certainly would have declined. Yuyudo trails off, thinking about how things might have gone if she had been honest from the start. Despite realizing he was essentially tricked into a date, he seems to accept the outcome. He recognizes that Kano-sen knew exactly how to manipulate the situation to get what she wanted, leaving him exhausted but unable to stay truly angry. As they continue their walk, Yuyudo questions why Kano chose to invite him instead of a university friend. Kano explains that doing so would be cruel, as inviting a male peer to a couples-only cafe would almost certainly give them the wrong idea about her romantic intentions. Yuyudo quietly admits that he, too, could have easily misinterpreted the situation as something more romantic. Kano immediately catches onto this admission and turns toward him with a mischievous grin, playfully teasing him for being the one who actually got the wrong idea about their date. Yuyudo reflects on his emotional resilience, noting that he has grown used to these types of misunderstandings thanks to his popular brother, Ayato. He recalls past Valentine's days where girls would constantly hand him chocolates meant for his sibling, a dynamic that Kano finds concerning and not good for his self-esteem. Despite his earlier slip of the tongue, Yuyudo tries to regain his composure and flatly denies that he ever misinterpreted Kano's intentions. He attempts to put an end to the conversation with a stern face, even as Kano continues to find amusement in his obvious flustered reaction. Continuing her playful bullying, Kano jokingly tells Yuyudo that based on how he acts, he is destined to never find a girlfriend for the rest of his life. Stung by her teasing and desperate to save face, Yuyudo shouts that he actually has a girlfriend. However, he immediately admits to himself that he is lying through his teeth just to end the embarrassment. Kano's playful mood vanishes instantly. She grips Yuyudo's shoulder with a menacing intensity, demanding to know every detail about this mystery girl from how they met to exactly how far their relationship has progressed. Yuyudo is left sweating and confused by her sudden shift in behavior. Meanwhile, Kano herself seems to freeze, staring at him with a look of genuine, wide-eyed shock as she processes the news she just heard. Kano-sen refuses to let Yuyudo's claim about having a girlfriend slide. Rather than dropping the subject, she seizes the opportunity to put him on the spot, shifting the conversation from a mere interrogation to a direct challenge. Caught completely off guard, Yuyudo can only stare at her in shock. He was hoping his impulsive lie would finally end her relentless teasing, but he realizes with growing dread that he has only managed to dig himself into a much deeper hole. With a bright, cheerful smile that belies the pressure she is applying, Kano-san delivers a final command. She looks directly at him and tells him, "Then, prove it to me," effectively calling his bluff and demanding tangible evidence of his romantic life. Yuyudo is left reeling, stammering the words, "prove it," back to her in utter disbelief. He is now faced with an impossible dilemma. He must either confess that he lied to protect his ego or find a way to provide proof for a relationship that doesn't exist. Kano-sen quickly hones in on the most effective way for Yuyudo to verify his claim. She tells him exactly and decides that, for the time being, the simplest way to settle the matter is for him to provide digital evidence. She reaches out her hand and directly asks, "Mi mustras tu telefono?" leaving him with almost no way to deflect. She stands before him with a radiant and confident smile, her hand extended as she waits for him to hand over his device. Her friendly demeanor doesn't mask the fact that she is calling his bluff in the most direct way possible, placing the pressure entirely on Yuyuto to produce the proof she's demanding. Kano continues her intrusive investigation of Yuyuto's phone, quickly spotting a list of female contacts. This discovery immediately triggers Yuyuto's fight or flight response, as he realizes how incriminating the mere presence of other girls looks to the intensely overprotective older sister. Terrified of the implications, Yuyuto waves his hands in a panic and insists that the contacts are a pure coincidence from his past. He desperately attempts to justify himself, claiming that he doesn't even use those numbers anymore and that Suzuno is the only girl he actually talks to. Suzuno's sister remains completely unmoved by his frantic excuses. Instead, she looks at him with a sweet yet terrifying smile, pointing out the simple flaw in his argument. If he truly doesn't use those contacts and only cares about Suzuno, then he has absolutely no reason to keep them. Taking initiative in his personal life, Kano decides to solve the problem herself. With a cheerful yet suffocating aura, she informs Yuyuto that she will do him the favor of deleting every single one of those girl contacts, effectively ensuring that his social world revolves entirely around her and her sister. Kano hands Yuyuto's phone back to him, casually remarking that she has finished cleaning his device. She justifies her invasive actions by claiming that acting quickly is simply part of the art of detachment. While she seems pleased with her efficiency, Yuyuto is left in a state of quiet shock as he takes back his phone, realizing his social life has been forcibly altered. As Yuyuto scrolls through his thinned-out contact list, which now only includes family members and Kano herself, he notices a glaring omission. He asks why Suzuno's contact information is gone, and Kano gleefully admits that she deleted her sister's number as well. Yuyuto reacts with a scream of pure disbelief, horrified that his direct line to his childhood friend has been severed. To address Yuyuto's concerns, Kano informs him of a new protocol for his relationship with Suzuno. She cheerfully explains that from now on, she will act as the sole intermediary between them. She insists that if he needs anything at all from her sister, he must go through her first. Yuyuto is instantly filled with dread, realizing how incredibly awkward and restricted his interactions with Suzuno are about to become. Ignoring Yuyuto's obvious distress, Kano winks and tells him that the decision is final and he must simply resign himself to the situation. Instead of heading back home as Yuyuto had expected, she announces that it is time to move on to the next item on her agenda. Yuyuto is left sweating and panicked, realizing that his afternoon with Suzuno's overbearing older sister is far from over. Just when Yuyuto thinks the teasing has reached its limit, Kano takes things a step further. She holds up her phone to reveal an advertisement for a love hotel, looking at him with a deceptively innocent expression. With a playful blush, she remarks that she thought visiting such a place would be a great idea, pushing the boundaries of their date into even more scandalous territory. Yuyuto, who has been barely holding on throughout the afternoon, finally hits his limit. Completely overwhelmed and blushing furiously, he stares at her in utter disbelief. He drops all pretenses of being polite and bluntly calls her out, asking if she realizes that her relentless and provocative behavior officially counts as sexual harassment. Seeing that she has finally pushed him to the edge, Kano doesn't miss a beat. She lets out a cheerful, carefree laugh and dismisses the entire situation with a breezy, "It's a joke." Her sudden shift back to her usual playful self is meant to diffuse the tension, though her earlier heavy feelings suggest that there might be a grain of truth behind her outrageous suggestions. Despite her claims of it being a prank, the damage to Yuyuto's composure is already done. He is left reeling from the emotional whiplash, unsure of how to navigate the intense and unpredictable energy Kano brings to their relationship. As the sun sets on their strange afternoon, it's clear that Kano still holds all the cards, leaving Yuyuto to wonder what other jokes she has in store for him. Yuyudo and Kano-san arrive at a large shopping center with the stated goal of picking out some new summer attire. However, their outing immediately attracts the attention of nearby shoppers, who begin whispering about how cute they look together as a couple. This unwanted public scrutiny leaves Yuyudo in a state of intense embarrassment as he tries to maintain his composure. Kano-san heads into the changing room to try on her selections, leaving a nervous Yuyudo to wait outside. She soon pulls back the curtain with a triumphant and playful smile, confirming that she has found exactly what she was looking for. Yuyudo's apprehension grows as he prepares himself for whatever bold fashion choice she has made. Stepping out to show off her new outfit, Kano-san brightly asks Yuyudo for his opinion on how it fits. Yuyudo is immediately sent into a blushing panic, barely able to meet her gaze as she poses confidently. He finds himself once again at the mercy of her relentless teasing, questioning why she always manages to turn a simple task into such a high-pressure situation. The big reveal shows that Kano-san has decided on a ruffled black bikini, declaring it to be her summer clothes purchase. When Yuyudo frantically argues that a swimsuit doesn't count as standard attire, she simply laughs it off, logicizing that because they are worn in the summer, they perfectly fit the description. Yuyudo is left completely defeated by her bold reasoning, forced to endure yet another chaotic moment in their unconventional date. Yuyudo and Kano-san's shopping spree continues through the high-end sections of the mall. They find themselves at an elegant glass display case, browsing through expensive accessories together. While Kano-san looks on with bright-eyed curiosity, Yuyudo remains visibly tense, clearly feeling out of his element in such a sophisticated environment. Kano-san's focus eventually shifts from herself to Yuyudo's own fashion. She begins picking out items for him, playfully holding up a white garment against his frame to see how it looks. Yuyudo is caught completely off guard by her sudden interest in his clothes, standing frozen in shock as she continues to take charge of the outing. The shopping trip proves to be a massive success, resulting in a stylish, lace-trimmed bag with a butterfly motif. Kano-san is seen humming happily, her good mood punctuated by musical notes as she celebrates their latest purchase. For her, the day has been a series of triumphs, while Yuyudo is left trailing behind her, overwhelmed by the rapid pace of the afternoon. As the day draws to a close, Yuyudo waves a hesitant goodbye to Kano-san as she disappears behind a curtain. Left alone to finally gather his thoughts, he stares into the empty space with a look of profound disbelief. He mutters to himself that it can't be, signaling that a startling and possibly troubling realization about the nature of their date has finally dawned on him. While wandering through a game center, Kano thanks Yuyudo for his help throughout the afternoon. Exhausted by the constant teasing, Yuyudo asks if they can finally move past the lie he told about having a girlfriend. Kano cheerfully agrees to drop the subject for now, giving Yuyudo a brief moment of relief as he believes the worst of the social pressure is over. His relief is short-lived as Kano immediately spots a Puricura photo booth. She excitedly announces that they should take a photo together to commemorate their outing. Despite Yuyudo's hesitation, Kano's overwhelming energy carries them toward the booth, turning their already awkward date into a permanent digital memory. Inside the booth, Yuyudo admits to himself that he has no idea how these machines work. While Kano takes complete control of the settings and telling him to leave everything to her, Yuyudo decides to play it safe. He settles on a classic, awkward peace sign, hoping to get through the photo session as inconspicuously as possible. The countdown ends and the photo is taken, but the result is far more intimate than Yuyudo anticipated. Instead of a simple pose, Kano lunges in and hugs him tightly from the side. The final image captures a radiant Kano winking at the camera while a red-faced, trembling Yuyudo stares in wide-eyed shock, completely overwhelmed by her sudden physical affection. After their session in the photo booth, Kano-san happily examines the printed Puricura, declaring that the entire outing was well worth the effort. Yuyudo, still reeling from the unexpected physical contact, blushes deeply and argues that his shocked expression in the photos is entirely her fault for hugging him so suddenly without warning. Yuyudo continues to grumble about the silly faces they made, questioning if such exaggerated and distorted expressions were truly necessary. Kano-sen playfully dismisses his concerns, explaining that those fun and expressive faces are exactly the grace of Purikura and are what make the experience so enjoyable. Despite his initial complaints, Yuyudo's mood shifts into a more serious and reflective tone. He honestly admits to her that because she is so naturally beautiful, making such silly faces for the camera feels like a genuine waste of her appearance. His blunt and heartfelt observation is delivered with complete sincerity, catching her completely off guard. The roles are suddenly reversed as Kano-san, who spent the whole day teasing Yuyudo, becomes the one flustered and blushing intensely. Stunned by his unexpected directness, she asks if that is truly how he views her, appearing genuinely touched and embarrassed. Meanwhile, a panicked Yuyudo realizes the weight of his words and desperately pleads with her to forget everything he just said. Kano-san uses Yuyudo's failed bluff about having a girlfriend as an excuse to seize his phone and perform a total social cleaning. She systematically deletes every female contact, including his childhood crush, Suzuno, leaving only family and herself. Yuyudo is left in a state of shock, realizing that his independent social life has been erased in an instant. With Yuyudo's contact list under her control, Kano-san establishes herself as the ultimate authority in his life. She cheerfully informs him that she is now the sole intermediary between him and her sister. She makes it clear that any future communication with Suzuno must go through her first, effectively cutting off his direct connection to the person he cares about most. After their intimate Purikura session, Kano-san takes the resulting sticker, which shows her hugging a flustered Yuyudo, and sticks it directly onto the back of his phone. Yuyudo is horrified by the permanence of the gesture, but Kano-san presents it as a commemorative act that officially links them together in the eyes of anyone who sees his device. Kano-san ends the day with a chilling and possessive warning. She smiles darkly and explains that the photo is intended to ward off any bad insects, other girls who might try to approach him. She strictly forbids him from ever hiding the photo under a phone case, demanding that he display her seal publicly so that everyone knows exactly who he belongs to. Yuyudo arrives home after his chaotic afternoon, only to be immediately greeted by his mother's observant comments. She mentions that he was out with Kano-chan and notes that it sounded like they were having quite a lot of fun together. Yuyudo, still reeling from the day's events and the sticker now permanently fixed to his phone, reacts with a panicked and flustered outburst toward her. Just as the tension with his mother peaks, Yuyudo's twin brother, Kyujo Ayato, walks through the door. Their mother warmly welcomes Ayato back, highlighting the stark contrast between the two siblings. Ayato stands tall and composed, looking exactly like the perfect and outstanding brother Yuyudo has been comparing himself to all day. Ayato immediately notices that Yuyudo has just returned as well and addresses him with a cool, level-headed demeanor. He asks Yuyudo if he has only just arrived home, but his tone quickly shifts to something more serious. He looks at his brother with a piercing gaze, clearly suspicious of Yuyudo's ability to handle social situations responsibly. The scene ends on a tense note as Ayato delivers a blunt warning. He looks directly at Yuyudo and tells him that he better not have caused any trouble for Kano-san during their time together. Ayato's stern interrogation reinforces the power dynamic between the twins, leaving Yuyudo feeling criticized and defensive even in the comfort of his own home. Yuyudo maps out the convoluted relationship dynamics currently surrounding him and his family. He starts with his own feelings, acknowledging that he is deeply in love with his childhood friend, Suzuno. However, this simple attraction is the starting point for a messy chain of unrequited love involving 4 different people. The first complication in Yuyudo's plan is Suzuno's own heart. Despite their long history, Suzuno is not interested in Yuyudo. Instead, she is infatuated with his twin brother, Ayato. This creates a painful barrier for Yuyudo, as he is forced to watch the girl he likes pine for his perfect sibling. The web grows even more tangled when considering Ayato's perspective. Ayato has no intention of returning Suzuno's feelings because he is actually in love with her older sister, Kano-san. Despite his outstanding reputation, Ayato finds himself struggling to win over the playful and older Kano-san, who has rejected his advances multiple times. Yuyudo arrives at a selfish but logical conclusion regarding this romantic stalemate. He realizes that if his brother Ayato were to successfully start dating Kano-san, it would effectively remove Ayato from the equation as Suzuno's love interest. Yuyudo believes that with his brother finally off the market, a window of opportunity might finally open for him to win Suzuno's heart. While relaxing at home, Yuyudo realizes he forgot to claim a daily reward on his phone. However, when he tries to open the app, he is met with a persistent loading screen. He grows frustrated with the lag, wondering to himself if his phone has always been this slow or if something is suddenly wrong with the device. The scene shifts to Kano-san alone at night, revealing the true reason for Yuyudo's phone troubles. She is staring at a GPS tracking map on her own device, which shows a black dot representing Yuyudo's exact location. She giggles to herself, satisfied that the surveillance system she secretly set up is working perfectly. As she continues to monitor him, Kano-san experiences a brief moment of self-awareness. She clutches her chest and looks conflicted, admitting to herself that she might have truly become a bad person. She reflects on the fact that she took advantage of his trust earlier that day to install a vigilance application on his phone without his knowledge. Kano-san's guilt is short-lived as she quickly finds a way to justify her invasive behavior. She decides that the entire situation is actually Yuyudo's fault, viewing him as someone who requires constant supervision. Despite her momentary doubt, she remains committed to her surveillance, convinced that her actions are a necessary consequence of his own behavior. The scene shifts to a chilling close-up of Kano-san's eye, where a distinct heart shape is visible within her pupil. This unsettling detail highlights her complete hyperfixation as she continues to monitor Yuyudo's location through the secret tracker, her gaze remaining fixed on the digital dot representing his life. In a moment of stark, private honesty, Kano-san finally voices the true motivation behind her recent overbearing behavior. She drops her playful, big sister facade, revealing that her intrusive actions and the punishment for Yuyudo's lie are driven by a much deeper and more singular obsession. She confesses to herself that she is irremediably in love with Yuyudo, confirming that her feelings have crossed the line from a simple attraction into something permanent and uncontrollable. For Kano-san, there is no longer any boundary she isn't willing to cross to ensure that he remains entirely within her grasp. The chapter ends on a haunting note, characterizing Kano-san's love as something too intense to be healthy. As she stares into the map showing Yuyudo safely at home, the depth of her fixation becomes undeniable, proving that her affection for him has transformed into a total and inescapable obsession. After the intense shopping trip and the intimate photo session at the games center, Kano-san leads a weary Yuyudo to their next stop, a local karaoke box. The building's exterior glow signals that despite the long afternoon, Kano-san has no intention of ending their time together just yet, dragging Yuyudo into yet another private and high-energy environment. Once they are settled into the secluded karaoke room, Kano-san immediately takes charge of the atmosphere. Noticing that the day has slipped away from them, she accurately guesses that Yuyudo hasn't had lunch yet. She turns to him with a cheerful smile and asks if they should order something to eat, once again positioning herself as the one who knows exactly what he needs. The intimacy of the small karaoke room only serves to heighten Yuyudo's anxiety. As Kano-san leans in close to him on the sofa to look at the ordering tablet, Yuyudo reacts with a visible jump of surprise. The sudden lack of personal space and the quiet, isolated setting make him more nervous than ever, as he struggles to maintain his composure under her direct and affectionate attention. Despite his obvious exhaustion and the social pressure he's faced all day, Yuyudo finds himself unable to pull away from Kano-san's pace. He sits stiffly in the room, caught in the momentum of a date that has systematically stripped away his defenses. As the music starts to play, Yuyudo is left to wonder how much longer this punishment will last and just how much more Kano-san expects from him before the day is over. In a frantic attempt to normalize the situation, Yuyudo quickly blurts out an order for fried chicken. Kano-san playfully accepts the choice and taps the order into the tablet. But the brief focus on food does little to ease Yuyudo's visible distress. He remains red-faced and trembling, clearly sensing that the atmosphere in the private room is shifting into dangerous territory. Kano-san's tone turns suggestive as she highlights the specific nature of their environment. She remarks that karaoke rooms are well known for having excellent sound insulation, creating a space where the outside world is completely cut off. Her comment emphasizes the total privacy they currently share, further heightening Yuyudo's sense of isolation and vulnerability. Leaning into the romantic tension, Kano-san mentions a common rumor about karaoke boxes. She notes that because of the soundproofing, many couples use these rooms as a place to get affectionate with one another. She follows this up with a lingering and provocative suggestion, whispering that they could do the same, leaving the scandalous implication hanging in the air. Yuyudo is left completely paralyzed by her bold words, unable to do more than stammer out a confused and panicked response. He realizes that the seclusion of the room has emboldened Kano-san to push the boundaries of their date further than ever before. Trapped by her direct gaze and suggestive comments, Yuyudo is forced to confront the reality that she has no intention of keeping things strictly platonic. Yuyudo is shown in a moment of deep internal conflict, letting out an exhausted sigh as he grapples with the physical and emotional toll of his intense encounter with Kano-san. The persistent pressure from her provocative behavior in the karaoke room has left him mentally drained and physically overwhelmed. Amidst the confusion of his current state, Yuyudo's thoughts immediately drift back to Suzuno. He reaffirms his long-standing feelings for his childhood friend, reminding himself that she is the person he truly likes and the one who has always held a special place in his heart. Despite his emotional loyalty to Suzuno, Yuyudo is forced to confront a confusing and embarrassing reality. He questions why he is reacting so strongly to Kano-san's advances, feeling a profound sense of guilt and bewilderment over his involuntary physical arousal toward her older sister. The scene concludes with Yuyudo in a state of total vulnerability, unable to reconcile his heart's desires with his body's reactions. He remains trapped in his own head, sweating and distressed as he struggles to regain his composure after having his personal boundaries and mental defenses completely shattered. Sitting across from her in the secluded karaoke room, Yuyudo expresses his lingering doubts about the wisdom of their upcoming singing competition. He looks at Kano-san with a skeptical and concerned expression, unsure if she fully understands the gravity of the bet they just made. Yuyudo directly asks Kano-san if she is truly okay with this arrangement. Having already noted her lack of singing talent, he is worried that she is setting herself up for a guaranteed loss by agreeing to a deal where the loser must fulfill the winner's wish. True to her nature, Kano-san doesn't take his concerns seriously. She reacts with a dramatic and playful outburst, feigning a sense of shock that he would doubt her abilities before the competition has even officially begun. Kano-san mockingly tells Yuyudo that his lack of faith in her hurts her feelings. Despite the clear disadvantage she faces, she maintains a confident and mischievous aura, turning his genuine concern into another opportunity to tease him and keep him off balance. Yuyudo returns to the karaoke room after his brief escape, only to be immediately scolded by Kano-san. She huffs and tells him not to leave her alone for so long, while Yuyudo internally grumbles that her own provocative behavior was the reason he needed to flee in the first place. Kano-san suggests a singing competition to settle things between them. Yuyudo, having noted that she seemed like a rather poor singer earlier, begins to think he might actually have a chance to turn the day in his favor. They agree that they will sing 3 times each, and the person with the highest score will be the winner. To raise the stakes, Kano-san clarifies the rewards. If Yuyudo wins, she promises to personally organize a date for him with his childhood crush, Suzuno. Motivated by the chance to finally get close to the girl he loves, Yuyudo becomes intensely determined, vowing to give it his all and win the contest. The competition concludes with a devastating reveal for Yuyudo. The karaoke screen displays a staggering score of 99.18, proving that Kano-san was once again lying about her abilities. With a wink and a peace sign, she cheerfully celebrates her landslide victory, leaving a stunned Yuyudo to realize that he has lost the bet and must now fulfill whatever wish Suzuno's obsessive sister has in mind. Following her overwhelming victory in the karaoke competition, Kano-san wastes no time in claiming her prize. She drops a massive bombshell on the already exhausted Yuyudo, announcing that her wish as the winner is for the two of them to go on an overnight trip together immediately. Yuyudo is thrown into a state of pure, unadulterated shock, unable to comprehend the scale of her demand. He stammers in disbelief, shouting, "An overnight stay? A trip?" as he struggles to process the scandalous implications of traveling alone with his childhood friend's older sister. Trying to find a way out of the high-stakes situation, Yuyudo attempts to appeal to reason and social norms. He frantically points out that since they are a boy and a girl, going on an overnight trip together is highly inappropriate. He desperately mentions that his mother would almost certainly object to such a reckless plan. Kano-sen remains completely unfazed by his protests, looking at him with a cheerful and persistent smile. She simply asks if he has any plans for tomorrow, knowing full well that he is free. Yuyudo realizes that despite his moral objections, he is trapped by the bet he made, leaving him at the mercy of Kano-san's increasingly intense obsession. After the chaotic preparation at home, Yuyudo and Kano-san finally arrive at their destination, Hakone Yumoto Station. Yuyudo is visibly surprised by the choice of location, admitting that he never expected her to take him to such a famous tourist spot for their punishment trip. Kano-san stretches her arms over her head with a triumphant and joyful expression, celebrating that they have finally made it to the resort area. While the trip was her idea, the long train ride has clearly left her just as eager as Yuyudo to reach their final accommodations. Noticing that it has already become quite dark outside, Kano-san decides that it's best to postpone any sightseeing until the next morning. She reassures a weary Yuyudo that there is no rush, as she has already handled all the logistics by reserving a hotel room for the night. The day concludes with Yuyudo expressing a final bit of skepticism about her planning skills. He asks in disbelief if she truly managed to secure a hotel reservation on a busy Saturday night, while Kano-san merely giggles, leaving the reality of their private sleeping arrangements as the next big hurdle for Yuyudo to face. Yuyudo and Kano finally enter their hotel room, but any hope Yuyudo had for separate quarters is immediately crushed. Kano casually informs him that, in the end, she only booked a single room for the both of them. She breezily justifies the decision by pointing out that extra rooms cost a significant amount of money, framing their shared accommodation as a simple matter of logistics. As she leads the way into the room, Kano continues to rationalize the living situation with a cheerful smile. She dismisses the potential awkwardness by focusing on the expense, acting as though staying in one room is the most sensible and practical choice for their trip. Her nonchalant attitude only serves to heighten Yuyudo's growing sense of apprehension. The situation escalates when Kano proudly shows off the room's main feature. With a triumphant gesture and a radiant expression, she reveals that she didn't just book a single room, but specifically reserved a large double bed. She claims that she made this choice specifically for Yuyudo's sake, presenting the intimate sleeping arrangement as a special favor. Yuyudo is left completely paralyzed at the entrance, physically shaking as he stares at the two pillows on the shared bed. The reality of the situation hits him with full force, leaving him speechless and overwhelmed by Kano's extreme boldness. He realizes that he is now trapped in an incredibly intimate setting with his childhood friend's older sister, far exceeding the boundaries of any punishment he expected. Just as Yuyudo is processing the reality of their shared room, Kano-sen drops another bombshell. She looks at him with a cheerful smile and reveals that she has made yet another specific reservation to ensure they make the most of their overnight stay. She excitedly announces that she has booked a private family bath for them to use. Looking at the steaming water, she makes it clear that they are expected to share the facility together, adding another intense layer of intimacy to an already high-pressure trip. Without waiting for a response, Kano-sen grabs Yuyudo's hand and begins to physically pull him toward the bath area. She declares that they are heading in immediately, leaving Yuyudo stammering in a state of complete panic as he is once again dragged along by her overwhelming energy. To counter his obvious distress, Kano-sen nonchalantly tells him that there's no reason to worry because she is essentially like a sister to him. She uses their familiar bond to justify the scandalous situation, while a mortified Yuyudo is left in total shock at how far she is willing to push their relationship. As the tension in the room reaching a fever pitch, Kano-sen leans in and whispers a shocking statement directly into Yuyudo's ear. She utters a provocative and highly inappropriate phrase about a lewd childhood friend controlling his intimate physical reactions, dropping all pretenses of sisterly boundaries. Yuyudo is struck by immediate, wide-eyed paralysis at the sheer boldness of her words. He stares blankly into the distance, his face frozen in an expression of pure disbelief. The graphic and forward nature of her comment leaves him completely unable to form a response or even move away. Maintaining her intense proximity, Kano-san delivers the line with a mischievous blush and a knowing smile. She appears fully aware of the psychological and physical impact her words are having, using the privacy of the moment to exert total emotional control over a defenseless Yuyudo. The scene concludes with Yuyudo left in a state of total moral and mental collapse. The scandalous claim, whispered in such an intimate setting, marks the ultimate transition from playful teasing to a much darker and more obsessive dynamic. Yuyudo is left trapped by her words, forced to confront a reality that is far more extreme than anything he had imagined for their trip. Yuyudo is shown in a state of total emotional collapse, leaning his head against the wall in despair. He is haunted by how Kano-san managed to find out about his secret adult manga collection, muttering to himself in disbelief, "How did you find out?" He realizes that his privacy has been completely compromised by her invasive actions earlier in the day. While Yuyudo wallows in his shame, Kano-sen remains in high spirits, appearing completely unaffected by the distress she has caused him. She calls out his name with a sing-song, cheerful tone, acting as if they are just having a normal, friendly conversation despite the psychological warfare she has been waging. Kano-san turns toward Yuyudo with a bright, triumphant smile and a playful wink. She decides to leave him with a valuable lesson about digital security, telling him firmly, "Don't lend your phone so lightly." Her words serve as both a piece of practical advice and a mocking reminder of how easily she was able to seize control of his social and private life. The scene concludes with Kano-san firmly in control of the dynamic. Her radiant and carefree demeanor stands in stark contrast to Yuyudo's broken state, highlighting the absolute power she now holds over him. Yuyudo is left with the painful realization that by handing over his phone to her, he unwittingly gave her the keys to his entire world. Yuyudo is struck by a sudden and terrifying epiphany regarding Kano-san's previous behavior. He connects the dots and realizes that the moment he handed her his phone earlier was when she secretly installed a GPS tracker. This revelation leaves him in a state of absolute shock, as he finally understands the true extent of her surveillance and the loss of his privacy. While attempting to find some peace in the hot springs at Hakone, Yuyudo remains visibly flustered and overwhelmed. As he washes his hair, he tries to reassure himself and find a shred of hope for modesty. He wonders to himself if Kano-san will at least act reasonably and bring a towel, struggling to maintain his composure in the high-pressure environment of the resort. Yuyudo's fragile sense of privacy is abruptly shattered by the loud sound of a sliding door opening. He is struck with immediate, wide-eyed panic as he realizes someone is entering the steam-filled shower area. The sudden arrival catches him completely off guard, leaving him paralyzed and unable to hide his shock at the blatant violation of his personal space. Kano-sen makes a bold and provocative entrance, appearing in the bath completely naked and playfully apologizing for the long wait. The situation officially escalates into a scandalous mixed bath encounter, leaving a defenseless Yuyudo trapped in an incredibly intimate setting with the Jaru. The chapter ends with a sense of impending chaos, suggesting that under these extreme circumstances, something significant is bound to happen. Kano-san responds to Yuyudo's flustered protests with an overwhelming amount of enthusiasm. She drops all pretense of being a sister figure, making it clear that because it is Yuyudo, she is more than happy to follow through with the intimate situation they are currently in. With a playful wink and a radiant blush, Kano-san tells him that she would do it with pleasure. Her response confirms that she isn't just teasing him anymore. She is actively enjoying his discomfort and the scandalous proximity of their shared bath. Yuyudo is left completely reeling from her bluntness, his face glowing bright red as he sweats and trembles in the steam. He is physically paralyzed by her forward behavior, unable to find the words to counter her aggressive affection. The scene concludes with Yuyudo spiraling into a deep internal panic. He stares at her in disbelief, wondering to himself why she is so intensely interested in pushing these boundaries. He realizes with growing dread that Kano-san's obsession with him has reached a point where normal rules and social norms no longer apply. Standing completely exposed in the steam, Kano-san delivers her final instruction to Yuyudo. With a playful blush and a confident smile, she tells him that she wants him to wash everything, leaving no room for misunderstanding about the level of intimacy she expects from him. Kano-san begins to guide Yuyudo through the process by pointing out specific areas of her body. Touching her own breast, she looks directly at him and simply says, "Here," forcing him to confront the reality of the task she has assigned him. Refusing to let Yuyudo look away, she continues her provocative demonstration. She moves her hand lower toward her pubic area and insists that he must wash her here too, relentlessly stripping away his last remaining defenses and social boundaries. The scene concludes with Kano-san in a state of total triumph. Her giggle and affectionate tone emphasize her complete psychological and physical control over the situation. Yuyudo is left in a state of absolute shock, trapped by her demands in the most compromising and intimate moment of their entire trip. As they sit together in the steaming water of the private hot spring, Kano-san continues to observe Yuyudo with an intense and lingering gaze. She takes a moment to scrutinize his appearance, noticing the physical changes that have occurred since he was a child. Kano-san delivers a blunt observation, telling Yuyudo that he has definitely become much more manly than he was in the past. Her playful yet direct compliment highlights her focus on his physical growth, adding to the high-pressure atmosphere of their shared bath. Clearly annoyed by her constant scrutiny, Yuyudo huffs and reminds her of a simple fact: he is already 17 years old. He uses his age to justify his physical development, trying to frame his maturity as something completely normal and expected. The exchange ends with Yuyudo muttering that it would actually be a problem if he hadn't started looking like an adult by now. While Kano-san lightheartedly agrees with him, Yuyudo remains visibly pouted and defensive, struggling to maintain his composure while being treated like a subject of study. Kano-san closes the distance between them even further, leaning in until she is right next to Yuyudo's ear. Her direct and unhesitating physical approach in the private bath leaves Yuyudo visibly shaken and unable to look away. Maintaining her intense closeness, Kano-san whispers a loaded question directly into his ear. She asks him if he is truly looking forward to what is about to happen with such eagerness, her tone filled with a mix of playful mischief and genuine obsession. Yuyudo is struck with a fresh wave of shock, his eyes wide and sweat beads forming as he struggles to process her scandalous words. The suddenness of her whisper and the implication behind her question catch him completely off guard, shattering his remaining composure. The scene concludes with Yuyudo in a state of total moral and physical collapse. Left blushing furiously and paralyzed by the intimacy of the moment, he is unable to offer a coherent response, fully trapped in the high-pressure atmosphere Kano-san has created. While Yuyudo is still trying to process the intense physical presence of Kano-san in the private bath, she takes things a step further by lunging in and hugging him tightly from behind. Yuyudo is struck with immediate, wide-eyed shock at the sudden and unhesitating contact, his face turning a deep shade of red as he struggles to maintain any sense of personal space. Trapped in her embrace, Yuyudo becomes acutely aware of the intimate contact between them. He stammeringly points out the scandalous reality of the situation, gasping that her chest is pressing directly against his bare back. The extreme closeness in such a secluded setting leaves him completely paralyzed and unable to retreat from her advances. Despite Yuyudo's obvious distress and frantic protests, Kano-san remains completely unfazed and continues to hold him firmly. She calls out his name with a mischievous and affectionate tone, seemingly enjoying the way her presence has completely shattered his composure. Her behavior reinforces her desire to exert total physical and emotional control over him during their trip. The scene concludes with Yuyudo in a state of total moral and mental collapse, unable to offer any further resistance to her overwhelming energy. Kano-san's radiant smile and unbothered demeanor highlight her victory in this high-pressure power dynamic. Yuyudo is left trapped by her affection, forced to endure the most compromising moment of their punishment date yet. Following their accidental tumble, Yuyudo quickly scrambles to his feet in a state of absolute panic. However, standing up only makes him feel more exposed and vulnerable, as he is still completely unclothed in the middle of the shower area. He can only stammer out a weak, "I," unable to form a coherent apology for the clumsy and intimate collision. Still lying on the floor where they landed, Kano-san looks up at Yuyudo with an expression of genuine shock mixed with her usual amusement. The sudden physical proximity and the sight of a flustered Yuyudo standing over her seems to have caught even the usually unflappable older sister off guard, though she quickly recovers her composure. Kano-san begins to giggle, blushing as she reflects on Yuyudo's reaction. She tells him that he is actually much bolder than he appears to be, playfully interpreting his accidental lunge and current standing position as a sign of hidden daring rather than simple clumsiness. The scene concludes with Yuyudo trembling from head to toe, his face a bright shade of red. The realization that Kano-san is now teasing him for being bold in such a compromising situation is the final blow to his dignity. He is left utterly defeated and mortified, trapped in the most scandalous and high-pressure moment of their entire punishment date. Back in the silence of the hotel room, Yuyudo sits alone on the edge of the bed, finally away from the steam and the suffocating proximity of the bath. However, the physical distance does nothing to ease his mind, as he finds himself trapped in a loop of the scandalous events that just took place between him and Kano-san. The reality of the day's punishment finally crashes down on him with full force. He is haunted by the memories of the private bath, the accidental fall, seeing Kano-san completely exposed, and the utter humiliation of her noticing his physical arousal. His face burns with a frantic, unyielding blush as he struggles to process the loss of his dignity. Yuyudo clutches his head in a state of total mental agony, letting out a desperate cry of frustration. He is overwhelmed by a single, terrifying question: how is he supposed to look Kano-san in the face ever again? The boundaries of their relationship have been so thoroughly shattered that a normal conversation now feels like a physical impossibility. The scene concludes with Yuyudo in a state of complete emotional collapse. Left trembling and red-faced on the bed, he realizes that he has no plan and no way to defend himself against Kano-san's relentless obsession. He remains paralyzed by his own overthinking, dreading the next moment he has to encounter the woman who has successfully claimed total control over his life. Kano-san cheerfully agrees to Yuyudo's earlier plea to move past the humiliating events of the bathhouse. She tells him with an unbothered smile that they should simply forget everything that happened, offering a temporary reprieve from the crushing shame he has been feeling. Instead of calling it a night, Kano-san enthusiastically suggests a return to their established routine. She tells him that they should proceed with their usual sleepover activities, framing the overnight stay as a standard extension of their relationship rather than a high-stakes punishment. Yuyudo is immediately suspicious of her choice of words, repeating the phrase, "the usual sleepovers," back to her with a look of deep concern. Given how extreme and boundary-pushing the day has been so far, he is visibly baffled by the idea that there is anything usual or normal about their current situation. The scene concludes with Yuyudo still completely off balance, unable to trust Kano-san's sudden shift in tone. While she seems ready to move on with a happy-go-lucky attitude, Yuyudo remains trapped in a state of apprehension, wondering what her version of a normal sleepover actually entails and just how much more he will be forced to endure before morning. As they settle in for their late-night conversation, Yuyudo expresses a sense of social unease. He remarks that being alone together in the quiet hotel room feels a bit boring or dull, continuing his effort to maintain an emotional distance and downplay the romantic tension that Kano-san has been building throughout the day. Kano-san immediately pushes back against Yuyudo's attempt to dampen the atmosphere. She playfully scolds him, telling him not to be so gloomy or dismissive of their time together. Her cheerful and persistent energy serves as a direct contrast to his awkwardness, as she refuses to let him retreat into a state of boredom. Despite Yuyudo's complaints, Kano-san remains completely focused on their intimate love talk. Looking up from her pillow with an eager and radiant expression, she admits that while she understands his perspective, she is far from satisfied. She declares that she simply wants to know more about him, signaling that her interrogation is nowhere near finished. The exchange reinforces the inescapable dynamic of their overnight trip. Yuyudo finds himself unable to sway the conversation towards something more neutral, as Kano-san's obsession with his private thoughts and feelings takes center stage. She remains determined to peel back his layers, leaving a weary Yuyudo with no choice but to continue their high-pressure dialogue late into the night. As the late-night interrogation continues in the hotel room, Kano-san becomes increasingly demanding. She stares at Yuyudo from across the bed, bluntly asking, "And well, what else?" She pushes him to elaborate further on his feelings for her sister, leaving a flustered Yuyudo struggling to find more descriptors. Stammering under the pressure, Yuyudo attempts to describe an endearing quality of Suzuno's, suggesting that she is a bit of an airhead. Kano-san immediately shoots down the sentiment with a harsh reinterpretation, coldly stating that being an airhead is simply another way of saying she is dumb. Yuyudo tries a different angle, mentioning that he finds Suzuno's small stature and overall cuteness to be appealing. Kano-san remains entirely unimpressed and continues to deconstruct his compliments, flatly retorting that she isn't small and cute, but is just short. The exchange highlights the absolute control Kano-san holds over the conversation. No matter what positive trait Yuyudo tries to attribute to her sister, Kano-san is quick to rephrase it in a reductive or negative light. She refuses to let him maintain any idealized image of Suzuno, forcing him to defend his feelings against her relentless cynicism. While lying in bed next to Kano-san, Yuyudo tries to make sense of his current situation. He theorizes to himself that Kano-san and her sister Suzuno must have had a major argument. He assumes that instead of returning to a tense household, Kano-san chose to drag him along on this sudden overnight trip to Hakone as a way to escape the family drama. Yuyudo attempts to shift the focus of their love talk away from himself. He finds it deeply troubling to hear Kano-san speak so dismissively of Suzuno, the girl who remains his primary romantic interest. Feeling emotionally drained by the constant questioning, he bluntly asks if they can finally stop talking about his personal feelings and move on to another topic. Taking the initiative, Yuyudo brings up a subject that has long puzzled him: the relationship between Kano-san and his twin brother. He notes that Ayato, who is seen as perfect by everyone else, has confessed his love to Kano-san multiple times. Yuyudo directly asks her why she refuses to date him, seeking to understand why someone as outstanding as his brother continues to face rejection. Kano-san's playful demeanor falters slightly as she gives her final answer regarding Ayato. With a nervous laugh and a drop of sweat, she simply states that Yuyudo's brother is simply not her type. Her blunt dismissal of the perfect twin reinforces her singular interest in Yuyudo himself, leaving him shocked and more confused than ever about her true intentions. As they lie together in the dark room, Yuyudo confronts the reality of his brother's unrequited love. He mentions how his perfect twin, Ayato, has confessed to Kano-san multiple times, yet she has consistently rejected him. When she casually dismisses Ayato as simply not her type, Yuyudo is struck with a sense of dread. He realizes his secret plan to pair her with Ayato, so he could finally have a chance with Suzuno, is fundamentally impossible, leaving his own romantic future in total disarray. Kano-san shifts the focus of the interrogation, demanding to know exactly what Yuyudo sees in her younger sister. When Yuyudo tries to defend his feelings by describing Suzuno as a cute airhead, Kano-san ruthlessly deconstructs his affection. She coldly reinterprets his compliments, arguing that Suzuno's airheadedness is just stupidity and her cuteness is merely a lack of height. She systematically tears down Yuyudo's idealized image of her sister, forcing him to face her own cynical perspective. The conversation deepens the power imbalance between the two. While Yuyudo is emotionally exhausted and struggling to justify his feelings for a girl who doesn't like him back, Kano-san remains perfectly composed and in control. Her relentless questioning and sharp critiques are designed to strip away Yuyudo's emotional defenses, leaving him vulnerable and isolated within the high-pressure environment of their shared hotel room. The night reaches a quiet, intense climax as Kano-san turns toward Yuyudo with a soft, affectionate expression. Looking directly into his eyes, she drops her earlier playful aggression for a more intimate tone. She whispers a final secret, admitting that she doesn't need his brother because she already has someone she truly likes. With a gentle blush and a lingering gaze, she confirms her singular obsession, leaving a stunned Yuyudo to realize that the someone she is referring to is the person lying right next to her. Yuyudo is struck with a sudden wave of genuine surprise as he processes Kano-san's latest admission. He stares at her with wide eyes, his internal thoughts racing as he realizes the gravity of what she just said, that she already has someone she truly likes. The revelation provides a sudden clarity to Yuyudo regarding her previous behavior. He realizes that her persistent rejection of his perfect brother, Ayato, wasn't just a matter of type, but because her heart was already occupied by another person entirely. As the conversation turns toward her true feelings, the atmosphere in the room becomes heavy with a new kind of intensity. A close-up of Kano-san's hand shows her gripping the bedsheets tightly, a physical manifestation of the deep and potentially overwhelming emotion she feels for her mystery crush. The scene concludes with Yuyudo in a state of total internal disarray. With his heart pounding audibly, he is left to grapple with the intimacy of her confession. He finds himself caught between the shock of her words and the high-pressure reality of lying in bed next to the woman who has just shared her most private romantic secret. The playful and teasing facade that Kano-san maintained throughout the day finally vanishes, replaced by a side profile that is chillingly serious. As she looks down in the dimly lit hotel room, her expression shifts into one of deep, focused intensity, signaling that the light-hearted punishment has evolved into something much more deliberate. Kano-san completely abandons her playful, big sister persona, adopting a chillingly serious gaze that leaves Yuyudo feeling like prey. In a moment of intense internal resolve, she vows to herself that she will definitely make Yuyudo hers. Yuyudo can only gulp in fear as he stares into her cold eyes, realizing that her light-hearted punishment has transformed into a very real and dangerous obsession. Just as suddenly as her mood shifted, Kano-san returns to her cheerful self, brightly announcing that it's finally time for them to sleep. While she seems content to settle in, Yuyuto lies awake in a state of high alert. He stares at the ceiling, sweating profusely as he frantically wonders what kind of terrifying tricks or traps she might have planned for him under the cover of darkness. Yuyuto's worst fears are realized when Kano-san suddenly glides across the bed and pulls him into a tight embrace under the blankets. Struck with immediate, wide-eyed shock, Yuyuto is left paralyzed by the suddenness of her physical affection. The quiet of the hotel room is shattered by his internal panic as he finds himself trapped by the very woman he was trying to avoid. Gazing at Yuyuto with an affectionate blush, Kano-san offers a mischievous excuse for her behavior. She whispers that she simply cannot sleep without a pillow, making it clear that she has chosen him to fill that role for the night. A red-faced and panicked Yuyuto can only stammer out her name in disbelief, realizing that he has no hope of escaping her grasp before morning. Yuyuto appears the next morning looking completely hollowed out, with heavy dark circles under his eyes and a look of deep fatigue. His disheveled appearance is a stark testament to the mental and physical toll the night has taken on him, leaving him in a state of visible exhaustion. Yuyuto reflects on the harrowing experience of the night, staring blankly as he admits that he didn't get any sleep at all. He directs his silent frustration toward Kano-san, noting that his current miserable state is entirely thanks to her presence and the high-pressure situation she forced him into. In a moment of dejected internal monologue, Yuyuto confesses that he didn't even manage to close an eye for a single moment. The constant proximity of the woman who claimed she would make him hers kept his anxiety spiked throughout the dark hours, preventing any hope of a restful night. While Yuyuto wallows in his sleep-deprived misery, a flashback to the bed shows Kano-san sleeping peacefully right next to him. The image highlights the cruel irony of their situation. The person who caused the chaos enjoyed a tranquil rest, while Yuyuto was left trapped in a state of total emotional and physical paralysis. Yuyuto and Kano-san continue their morning of sightseeing, arriving at a large, bustling shrine. Observing the mass of tourists and locals, Yuyuto remarks that he now understands why the place is so incredibly full of people, finally grasping the popularity of their destination. Kano-san draws Yuyuto's attention toward the landmark with a cheerful and inviting expression. She points out the scenery and asks him directly if he doesn't think the location is genuinely beautiful, encouraging him to take a moment and appreciate the traditional atmosphere. The two stand before the impressive architecture of the Hakone Shrine. Yuyuto is shown looking up at the structure with a look of wide-eyed surprise and awe, clearly caught off guard by the grandeur and scale of the famous spiritual site. Kano-san provides some context for Yuyuto's surprise regarding the large crowds. She explains that the Hakone Shrine is a super famous place after all, making it clear that the density of people is a natural consequence of its status as a major cultural landmark. As they navigate the crowded shrine, Yuyuto observes the constant attention Kano-san attracts from strangers. He realizes that her earlier remark about popularity was not just a playful boast, but a reflection of a genuine social burden. He begins to see that being the center of attention wherever she goes comes with a hidden weight that most people would find exhausting. Yuyuto reflects on Kano-san's admission that her beauty often leads to unwanted complications. He considers her words about how people constantly get their hopes up around her or become consumed by jealousy. He realizes that for her, social interactions are a minefield of emotional expectations and petty resentments, making her public life feel like a repetitive and annoying hassle. The narrative shifts to a haunting image of a younger Kano-san sitting alone on a set of stairs, her head buried in her arms. This glimpse into her childhood presents a stark contrast to her current bold and outgoing personality. The lonely figure suggests a past marked by isolation or distress, hinting that the confident persona she displays today might be a carefully constructed shield. Watching Kano-san walk ahead of him, Yuyuto is overcome with a newfound sense of empathy. He acknowledges to himself that she has likely been through a lot to become the person she is now. This realization shatters his previous narrow view of her, as he starts to understand that her intense and obsessive behavior might be rooted in a much more complex and painful emotional history. Kano excitedly guides Yuyudo toward their next destination on the shrine grounds, the Kyuzuryu Shrine. While Yuyudo initially asks for clarification on whether they are visiting the main sanctuary, Kano's bubbling enthusiasm makes it clear that this particular spot is meant to be the most significant part of their tour. Kano reveals the true reason for her excitement, explaining that this specific shrine is legendary for its power to bring people together in romantic relationships. As she blushes with anticipation, Yuyudo finally understands that this visit is intended to be the climax of their trip, centered entirely around the theme of romantic destiny. Despite being on an overnight trip with Kano, Yuyudo's heart remains firmly fixed on his childhood friend. As they prepare to pay their respects at the altar, he reflects on his own unrequited feelings and decides that he needs to offer a sincere prayer of his own, specifically hoping for a future where he can finally be with Suzuno. When it comes time to actually pray, Yuyudo is caught completely off guard by the sheer force of Kano's behavior. While he offers a standard gesture of respect, Kano enters a state of deep, muttering intensity, focused entirely on her internal plea. Yuyudo can only watch in shock and sweat, realizing just how terrifyingly serious she is about her desire to claim the person she loves. As Yuyudo watches Kano-sen's intense and somewhat frightening devotion at the shrine, his internal monologue shifts to a place of unexpected sympathy. He finds himself reflecting on her earlier confession about having a secret crush, but his lack of self-awareness leads him to a completely false conclusion about who that person might be. Yuyudo admits to himself that he couldn't help but feel a little bit sorry for the mystery guy that Kano-sen likes, given her overwhelming energy, possessive tendencies, and the terrifyingly serious gaze she just displayed while praying. Yuyudo views her affection as a burden rather than a blessing for the poor soul on the receiving end. The tragedy of Yuyudo's pity lies in the fact that he is entirely unaware that the person he is feeling sorry for is actually himself. While he imagines some distant, unfortunate boy being targeted by Kano-san's heavy feelings, he fails to realize that every calculated move she has made during their overnight trip has been designed to claim him alone. The scene concludes with Yuyudo lost in thought, his expression a mix of exhaustion and misplaced concern. He notes that, in that moment, something shifted, signaling that the dynamic of their trip is about to enter a new, even higher stakes phase. Yuyudo remains trapped in his own misunderstanding, oblivious to the fact that the predator he fears is already walking right beside him. After their successful sightseeing trip, Kano-sen decides to take their public association to the next level. She looks at the intimate photo they took together and excitedly announces that she's going to post it on social media. She aims for a trendy social media aesthetic, completely ignoring the massive fallout this would cause for Yuyudo. Yuyudo is immediately thrown into a state of pure panic, shouting that she absolutely cannot publish the photo. He is overwhelmed by the logistical nightmare of the situation, frantically asking himself how he could ever explain to his friends and family why he is featured in such an intimate post with her. Kano-san remains entirely unfazed by his distress, offering a solution that only makes the situation worse. With a bright smile and a playful blush, she asks him, "What if I just say you're my boyfriend?" She continues to push the boundaries of their relationship, seemingly enjoying the way her bold suggestions completely shatter his composure. Yuyudo reacts with a scream of horror, declaring that her suggestion is even worse than the original problem. He points out the devastating reality that both his brother, Ayato, and his crush, Suzuno, would see the post and believe they are a couple. The day concludes with Yuyudo trapped in a high-pressure dilemma, realizing that Kano-san's obsession has created a social catastrophe he can no longer escape. While looking out from the cable car, Yuyudo begins to worry about the logistics of their sudden getaway. He turns to Kano-san and asks her directly what exactly she told her family regarding her whereabouts, curious to know how she explained a sudden overnight trip. Kano-san admits that she wasn't entirely honest with her household. She explains that she gave them a generic excuse, telling her family that she was simply going on a trip with some of her friends to avoid any unnecessary questioning or suspicion. Despite her cover story, Kano-san reveals a lingering suspicion that she didn't quite get away with the lie. She calmly remarks that she believes her mother actually knows she is out with a boy, suggesting that her mother's intuition was sharp enough to see through the friend's excuse. Yuyudo is immediately struck with a wave of panic at the thought of her family knowing the truth. He reacts with shock, frantically asking her if that isn't a bad situation to be in. He is left sweating and overwhelmed by the potential social and familial consequences of her mother finding out about their private trip. As the steam fills the private family bath, Yuyudo remains in a state of visible confusion and distress. When Kano-san hints at her true intentions for the trip, Yuyudo can only stammer her name, unable to grasp the weight of her words. He is caught in a cycle of disbelief, struggling to believe that his childhood friend could be so direct about her desires. Maintaining her intense and intimate proximity, Kano-san looks at Yuyudo with a knowing, mischievous smile. She leans in and asks him directly, "Do you really not understand?" Her question is designed to corner him, forcing him to confront the obvious romantic and physical tension that she has been cultivating since they arrived in Hakone. The narrow, enclosed space of the private bath serves to amplify Kano-san's predatory energy. While she appears perfectly calm and entertained by his reaction, Yuyudo is shown sweating and trembling, his face a bright shade of red. He is physically paralyzed by her gaze, feeling as though every social and emotional defense he built has been systematically dismantled. The scene concludes with Yuyudo in a state of total bewilderment, his thoughts a chaotic mess of shock and apprehension. Kano-san's persistent teasing has reached a point where Yuyudo can no longer ignore the scandalous nature of their situation. He is left trapped in the bath, forced to endure the high-pressure mystery of exactly what Kano-san expects from him next. The day begins with Kano-san relentlessly teasing a flustered Yuyudo, playfully questioning if he is feeling excited while they are alone together. To escape the awkwardness, Yuyudo focuses on their sightseeing trip to the Hakone Shrine, where the massive crowds serve as a backdrop to Kano-san's undeniable popularity. While Yuyudo is impressed by the attention she attracts, Kano-san reveals the dark side of her beauty, admitting that being constantly watched and envied is an exhausting hassle. The two move on to the Kyuzuryu Shrine, a site famous for fostering romantic connections, which Kano-san considers the true highlight of their trip. While Yuyudo offers a sincere prayer for a future with his crush, Suzuno, he is disturbed to find Kano-san in a state of terrifyingly intense, muttering devotion. Unbeknownst to Yuyudo, Kano-san is privately vowing to make him hers, leaving him to mistakenly pity the unfortunate guy who has caught her obsessive interest. The tension escalates when Kano-san threatens to post an intimate photo of them on social media, even suggesting she could label him as her boyfriend to fit a specific aesthetic. Yuyudo is thrown into a total panic, realizing that if his brother Ayato or Suzuno saw the post, his social life would be utterly destroyed. Despite his protests, Kano-san remains unfazed, casually mentioning that she lied to her family about being with friends, though she suspects her mother already knows the truth. While riding a cable car overlooking a beautiful lake, Kano-san pushes the boundaries further by suggesting her family wouldn't care if they did naughty things together. She corners a terrified Yuyudo with a predatory gaze, internally declaring her intent to finally make a move on him in the enclosed space. The chaotic getaway eventually concludes the following morning as Kano-san returns to her normal routine, cheerfully waking up her younger sister, Suzuno, and telling her to start her day. Kano-san is shown industriously managing the morning household chores with practiced ease. She handles everything from airing out the bedding on the balcony to frying up breakfast and carefully preparing school uniforms. Her efficiency and focus suggest she takes great pride in her role as the primary caregiver of the house. Once the morning preparations are complete, Kano-san calls out to her younger sister, Suzuno-chan, letting her know that a full meal is waiting. The table is set with an impressive spread of toast, eggs, sausages, and fresh coffee, reflecting the genuine effort Kano-san puts into ensuring her sister starts her day perfectly. While Suzuno-chan enjoys her breakfast, Kano-san continues her care by meticulously brushing her sister's hair. Suzuno-chan, clearly accustomed to this level of attention, smiles brightly and offers a sincere thank you. Kano-san reacts with a modest but satisfied "oh my," appearing content in her role as a motherly figure. The busy morning routine concludes at the front door as Suzuno-chan prepares to leave. Kano-san hands her the school bag and performs one last check to ensure she has everything she needs. Suzuno-chan waves a cheerful goodbye as she heads out, leaving Kano-san watching over her with a warm, protective gaze after a successful morning of sisterly care. Suzuno returns home in a state of complete emotional distress, immediately seeking out her older sister. Overwhelmed by the fact that she forgot to complete her homework, she tearfully begs Kano-san to step in and assist her before the deadline. Driven by panic, Suzuno lunges forward and throws her arms around Kano-san in a tight, desperate hug. She calls out to her sister with a mix of affection and desperation, relying on their close bond to get her through the academic crisis she's facing. Kano-san is momentarily caught off guard by the sudden physical contact, but she quickly realizes the situation. Looking down at her sister, she sighs and remarks that Suzuno is truly hopeless for letting such an important task slip her mind once again. Despite her earlier reflections on over-pampering her sister, Kano-san ultimately gives in to the request. She agrees to help Suzuno with the forgotten assignment, but she delivers a final, stern warning. This must be the absolute last time she bails her out of trouble. Overwhelmed by gratitude after Kano-san agrees to help her with her forgotten assignment, Suzuno-chan is overcome with emotion. With a bright blush and a wide, joyful smile, she throws her arms around her older sister and loudly declares, "I love you, big sister." The sudden outburst and physical affection momentarily catch Kano-san off guard. However, her initial shock quickly fades, and she looks down at her younger sister with a soft, affectionate smile and a gentle laugh. She can only sigh and remark, "Seriously," seemingly resigned to her sister's energetic whims. Despite the heartwarming display of sibling bonding, a sharper reality is voiced from within the house. A blunt observation is made that Suzuno-chan is far too skilled at playing the innocent whenever she finds herself in a difficult situation and needs her older sister's help. Kano-san stares at Yuyudo with an unsettlingly intense and obsessive expression, even licking her lips as she focuses on him. She drops all pretense of being a casual acquaintance, telling him that she is finally going to take action or make a move on him, making her romantic fixation undeniably clear. Without warning, Kano-san corners Yuyudo inside the moving cable car, pinning him against the glass wall. Yuyudo is struck with immediate shock and confusion, realizing that the secluded setting of the cabin has given her the perfect opportunity to trap him and exert total physical control. The situation reaches a breaking point as Kano-san leans her face inches away from Yuyudo's. He is completely overwhelmed by her closeness, panicking internally as he realizes she has moved far past his personal boundaries. His thoughts race with alarm, noting that she has gotten much too close for him to handle. Visibly flustered and sweating, Yuyudo tries to push back against the high-pressure atmosphere. He calls out to her in desperation, pleading with her to wait and stop what she is doing. He attempts to regain some sense of order, even as he remains cornered and defenseless against her aggressive and singular pursuit. The atmosphere inside the cable car reaches its absolute breaking point. Kano-san, having successfully cornered Yuyudo, finally makes her move. She gently but firmly cradles his face in her hands, her eyes half closed with a mix of affection and intense fixation as she leans in toward him. Yuyudo is shown in a state of total emotional and physical collapse. His face is a bright shade of red, and a single drop of sweat highlights his extreme nervousness. He lets out a silent, internal scream of "Oa asta," his mind completely short-circuiting at the undeniable reality of what is about to happen. There is no longer any room for Yuyudo to escape or deflect. The secluded, moving cabin has become the stage for a moment he had desperately tried to avoid throughout the trip. Kano-san's silent, blushed expression confirms that she is fully committed to this intimate encounter, leaving Yuyudo defenseless. The scene concludes at the precipice of a definitive change in their relationship. The physical closeness and the tenderness of Kano-san's touch signal the end of Yuyudo's ability to view her merely as an older sister figure. As their lips are about to meet, the high-pressure date reaches a scandalous turning point that Yuyudo can never take back. After the intense physical encounter in the cable car, Kano-san casually dismisses the entire moment as just her teasing him. Yuyudo is left in a state of total emotional exhaustion, sighing with relief as he realizes he survived her latest high-pressure prank. As they prepare to return home from Hakone, Yuyudo expresses deep concern about keeping their overnight trip a secret. He begs Kano-san to stay quiet about their time together, fearing the absolute social disaster that would follow if his brother or Suzuno found out. To ensure no one gets suspicious, Yuyudo reveals a calculated plan involving a bag full of carefully chosen souvenirs. He explains that he bought various gifts for his parents and brother to serve as a diversion, hoping the distraction will prevent anyone from questioning his whereabouts. The day ends with a sobering reminder of their complex family web as Kano-san muses about Suzuno and Ayato's ongoing date. She wonders aloud if their outing is over yet, leaving a wide-eyed Yuyudo to face the reality that while he was with her, the girl he actually likes was spending the day with his perfect brother. Yuyudo returns to the city after his intense and exhausting overnight trip to Hakone with Kano-san. While he is visibly drained and still processing the near confession in the cable car, Kano-san appears completely energized. She casually brings up the fact that Suzuno-chan and Ayato were also out on a date, hoping that they didn't cross any boundaries, further stressing Yuyudo about the tangled web of their relationships. A few days pass, and the shock of the trip begins to settle. Yuyudo manages to use the souvenirs he bought in Hakone as a successful diversion, preventing his brother and Suzuno from suspecting the truth. However, the psychological weight of the trip lingers, as Yuyudo finds himself more confused than ever about Kano-san's true intentions and his own complicated feelings. The scene shifts to a bright, bustling mall where a group of students has gathered to celebrate. The clinking of glasses and a loud cheers signal a return to high school life. The group is enjoying a meal together in a restaurant, creating a lively and normal atmosphere that stands in stark contrast to the high-pressure intimacy of Yuyudo's time in Hakone. While eating, Yuyudo is approached by his classmate, Mizuhashi Kaido. Kaido strike up a conversation about their recent school life, specifically mentioning how fun this year's sports festival was. Yuyudo listens intently, seemingly glad to be back in a familiar environment with his peers, even as he navigates the lingering social complexities following his time with Kano-san. Gathered at a restaurant after the school's sports festival, Yuyudo's friends, Suzaki Kenji and Kamamura Shu, decompress over their performance. Suzaki is visibly frustrated and bitter about the results, lamenting the fact that despite their hard work, they only managed to secure a second-place finish. While Kamamura tries to remain calm and composed, the sting of the near victory weighs heavily on the group's morale. The conversation quickly shifts to the social consequences of their ranking. Suzaki exclaims with exaggerated passion that if they had managed to win first place, they would have undoubtedly become the center of attention. He claims that the girls at school would have fallen head over heels for them, framing the sports victory as their missed ticket to ultimate popularity and romantic success. The praise soon turns toward Yuyudo's brother, Ayato, whose athletic prowess left a lasting impression on everyone. The friends marvel at how Ayato, primarily a soccer player, was also dominant on the volleyball court. They label him a true king of sports, admiring his versatility and skill. This constant comparison to his perfect brother creates a familiar but stifling atmosphere for Yuyuto as he listens to his friends gush over Ayato's talent. While his friends distract themselves with snacks, specifically a cheese-flavored fish cake, Yuyuto can only offer a forced, awkward laugh. He lets out a weary sigh, noting to himself that the direction of the conversation is starting to take a difficult and uncomfortable turn. Between the reminders of his brother's perfection and his own lingering secrets regarding the Yuuki sisters, Yuyuto feels increasingly out of place, even among his closest classmates. As the celebratory meal continues, the topic shifts back to the results of the sports festival. One of the classmates, Mizuhashi Kaido, makes a blunt observation that strikes a chord with everyone at the table. He remarks that if only their class had Ayato-kun on their team, they would have easily won the championship, inadvertently highlighting the gap between Yuyuto and his twin. Sensing the awkward tension, Kamamura Shu quickly tries to cheer Yuyuto up, pointing out that Yuyuto actually scored quite a few points for the class himself. Suzaki Kenji loudly agrees, but he quickly shifts the blame for their second-place finish onto Ayato's sheer dominance. He claims they only lost because Yuyuto's brother is simply too overpowered, a sentiment that only serves as another reminder of Ayato's perfect status. Unable to handle the constant gushing over his brother's perfection, Yuyuto's patience finally reaches its limit. He stands up abruptly from the table, catching his friends off guard with the sudden noise of his chair. He offers a brief, strained excuse, telling the group that he needs to use the restroom, leaving his friends watching him walk away with looks of genuine concern and confusion. Once alone in the quiet hallway of the mall, away from the chatter of his classmates, Yuyuto finally lets his guard drop. He lets out a deep, heavy sigh of haze, his face etched with a mix of exhaustion and dejection. He walks down the corridor in silence, struggling to find his own worth in a world that seems to revolve entirely around the shadow of his brother. Lingering in the city alone, Yuyuto finds himself spiraling into a familiar pattern of self-doubt. He reflects on the massive gulf between himself and his twin brother, Ayato, admitting that they are truly worlds apart in every meaningful way. He concludes that his perfect brother likely doesn't even spare a thought for the anxieties plaguing his mind, leaving Yuyuto to wallow in a state of pathetic misery. Yuyuto's solitary reflection is abruptly shattered by a sight that turns his anxiety into a physical shock. He watches from a distance as Ayato and his childhood friend, Suzuno, walk through the station together. Seeing his crush side by side with his superior twin brother confirms his deepest insecurities and makes his own recent secret getaway with Kano-san feel like a distant, confusing memory. Stunned by their presence, Yuyuto is overcome with a mix of paranoia and dejection. He desperately questions why Suzuno and his brother are together in that specific place, his mind racing to understand the nature of their meeting. The sight of them looking so natural together leaves him feeling completely paralyzed, as he struggles to reconcile his hope for a future with Suzuno against the undeniable reality of her closeness with Ayato. The emotional blow is finalized as Yuyuto recalls Kano-san's teasing words from earlier. She had explicitly mentioned to him that those two appeared to be out on a date together that day. With Kano's juicy information echoing in his head, Yuyuto is left in a state of total devastation, convinced that the romantic tie he prayed for is actually being forged between his brother and the girl he loves. After the high-pressure events of his secret getaway, Yuyuto returns to the city only to be immediately confronted by his deepest insecurity. He spots his twin brother, Ayato, and his childhood crush, Suzuno, walking through the station together. The sight of them looking so comfortable side by side acts as a brutal reminder of the gap between himself and his perfect sibling. Yuyuto stands frozen in shock, his mind racing to process the implications of their meeting. He realizes that while he was struggling to handle Kano-san's overwhelming advances, Ayato was effortlessly winning over the person he cares about most. The contrast in their social success leaves Yuyudo feeling more pathetic than ever, viewing himself as nothing more than a failed version of his brother. Suzuno appears visibly happy and flustered as she walks with Ayato, a look of genuine affection that she has never directed toward Yuyudo. Watching the two of them from behind, Yuyudo is overcome with a crushing sense of defeat. He clenches his fist in silent frustration, forced to witness the romantic tie he desperately prayed for being forged between his brother and the girl he loves. The scene concludes with Yuyudo in a state of total emotional paralysis. He focuses on Suzuno's blushing face and her obvious infatuation with Ayato, finally forcing himself to accept the truth. He admits to himself that face Suzuno is making confirms his worst fears, leaving him trapped in a cycle of unrequited love and feeling completely abandoned in his own despair. Just as Yuyudo is sinking into a state of total despair after seeing Suzuno with his brother, Kano-sen makes a sudden and high-energy appearance. Without a word of warning, she lunges forward and pulls him into an incredibly tight, suffocating hug, calling out his name with a cheerful "Yoo-hoo" that shatters his gloomy mood. Yuyudo is left in a state of utter shock, his face buried against her as he struggles to process her presence. He stammers in disbelief, "Kano-san, why are you here?" unable to comprehend how she found him or why she is being so aggressively affectionate in the middle of the station. The scene shifts to a close-up of Kano-san's face as she lets out a small, mysterious giggle. She appears completely unfazed by Yuyudo's panic, her expression turning into a satisfied and somewhat predatory smirk. She begins to explain her arrival with a suggestive tone, hinting that her being there was no accident. The chapter concludes with Kano-san holding Yuyudo firmly in her grasp, her playful facade barely hiding the depth of her fixation. While Yuyudo was pining for Suzuno, Kano-san has successfully reclaimed him for herself. The final image leaves Yuyudo trapped in her embrace, signaling that she has no intention of letting him go as her punishment continues into a new chapter. Yuyudo is left in a state of total shock after spotting a familiar couple walking together in the hallway. He realizes that the rumors are true and that the two are officially dating, a fact he finds difficult to accept. While he is distracted by these thoughts, an unexpected figure suddenly approaches him from behind. Kano catches Yuyudo by surprise with an affectionate embrace, leaving him flustered as she begins to explain her sudden appearance. Kano excitedly shows off her new bag and asks Yuyudo why he is wandering around the area by himself. Yuyudo explains he is there for a game tournament, but Kano quickly points out how distracted he seems as he realizes he is running late. Overcoming his confusion, Kano insists on joining him to meet his group, leading him toward his friends. Upon their arrival, Yuyudo's friends are left in awkward silence, completely stunned to see him appearing with such a stylish girl. Yuyudo's friends are immediately struck by Kano's beauty and press him for an introduction. Kano greets the group warmly before creating chaos by boldly declaring herself to be Yuyudo's girlfriend. The unexpected announcement leaves the entire group in shock, catching Yuyudo completely off guard. A flustered Yuyudo frantically tries to deny the relationship as his friends look on in awkward disbelief. Kano escalates her teasing by hinting at a much more intimate past, causing further chaos among Yuyudo's friends. A panicked Yuyudo tries to shut down her provocative claims while the others reel from the shock of her words. The situation eventually calms down as the group learns they are actually childhood friends and that Kano is a former student of their school. Yuyudo expresses deep relief that the misunderstanding is finally resolved, even as Kano continues to enjoy her playful antics. Yuyudo decides to head home, attempting to make a quick exit to avoid further embarrassment. Kano playfully stops him, questioning why he is in such a sudden hurry to leave. As they interact, Yuyudo notices his friends watching Kano with completely starstruck expressions. He realizes with a defeated sigh that his friends have fallen entirely under her charm. Kano playfully asks Yuyudo's friends to borrow him for a while, leading him away as they jokingly call her their queen. The pair heads to a Starbucks-style cafe, marking Yuito's very first visit to the popular coffee shop. While they are seated together, Kano leans in and mischievously asks Yuito how he felt about his first time. Startled by her suggestive phrasing, Yuito spits out his drink in shock before realizing she was only referring to his first trip to the cafe. Yuito continues to feel flustered by Kano's teasing questions and her overwhelming presence. He becomes increasingly nervous as he realizes how closely she is sitting to him, feeling the physical contact between them. Attempting to create some personal space, Yuito tries to move away, but Kano immediately follows and closes the gap. When he suggests sitting on a separate sofa, she flatly refuses, insisting that there is no point in being together if they aren't sitting right next to each other. Yuito and Suzuno are stunned to run into each other at the cafe, with both questioning why the other is there. Their confusion is immediately cleared up when Kano happily admits to orchestrating the entire encounter. She reveals that she was the one who messaged Suzuno and invited him to the same location. Yuito realizes the whole situation was another one of Kano's playful setups as the boys process her trick. Kano teasingly questions if Suzuno and his companion are officially on a date. To Yuito's visible surprise, the girl shyly confirms that they are indeed out together. Seizing the moment, Kano pulls Yuito close and playfully claims that they are also on a date of their own. A completely flustered Yuito immediately tries to set the record straight, insisting their encounter was purely coincidental. Yuito privately confronts Kano about her lie, fearing that Suzuno will get the wrong idea about their relationship. Kano dismisses his panic by asking if he truly dislikes the misunderstanding, leaving him flustered and defensive. The atmosphere turns chillingly cold as Suzuno watches them with a dark and menacing expression. A heavy silence fills the air as Suzuno finally begins to speak, sending Yuito into a state of total panic. Kano meets the older brother's interrogation with a smug and calculating expression. She poses a direct challenge, asking how he would react if her claims about dating Yuito were actually true. Her provocative questioning only heightens the tension, leaving the group uncertain of her true motives. The atmosphere at the cafe remains heavy as everyone is left to ponder Kano's cryptic and playful words. Suzuno's brother is left speechless as Kano reveals the innocent truth behind her mysterious summons. She explains that her only goal was a simple catch-up, as it had been quite a while since the group last gathered. The initial tension finally eases when Suzuno realizes Kano actually acted on their shared desire to reunite. Yuito enjoys the rare moment of seeing everyone together while the group settles into a long overdue afternoon of conversation. Ayato and Kano begin catching up on their respective lives, with Ayato confirming that he has been doing well recently. Suzuno enthusiastically praises Ayato's accomplishments, specifically mentioning his top exam scores and his role on the varsity soccer team. When Kano points out Yuito's own impressive 7th place ranking, Suzuno happily agrees that both twins possess exceptional talent. However, Yuito privately reflects on the rank difference, feeling a deep sense of discouragement that no amount of effort can close the gap between him and his brother. Yuito is caught completely off guard when he receives a provocative selfie from Kano on his phone. Later, he visits a busy restaurant where he is asked to share a table due to the limited seating. As he goes to take his seat, he is stunned to recognize the person already sitting there. Much to his surprise, he finds himself face to face with his older brother, leaving both siblings in total shock. The waiter interrupts the brothers' surprise meeting to ask if they have decided on their meals. In a striking moment of synchronicity, both siblings simultaneously order the restaurant's most punishingly spicy dish. The coincidence leaves them in awkward anticipation as they wait for their identical, high-heat orders to be prepared. The steaming bowls are finally served, presenting the brothers with a shared culinary challenge of extreme heat. Yuito is immediately struck by the overwhelming heat of the dish, struggling to maintain his composure. He quickly succumbs to the burn and reaches for water to soothe his stinging mouth. Ayato remains entirely unfazed, continuing his meal with an air of effortless superiority. He mocks Yuito's low spice tolerance, teasing him for giving up after only a single bite. Yuito refuses to back down from the challenge, determined to finish the meal without any water. Not wanting to be outdone, Ayato maintains the same relentless pace despite the overwhelming heat. The brothers transform the meal into a frantic race, internally urging themselves to eat faster. Despite the tears and sweat streaming down their faces, neither is willing to be the first to give in to the spice. Yuito calls out to his brother, catching Ayato's attention as they prepare to part ways after their meal. He takes a moment to express his sincere gratitude, thanking Ayato for the time they spent together. Still feeling the effects of the spicy food, Yuito shyly proposes getting some ice cream to cool down. Yuito is suddenly startled when his phone vibrates, catching his immediate attention during the group outing. Completely flustered, he frantically questions her motives for sharing such an intimate photo so unexpectedly. His panic intensifies as he desperately tries to hide the scandalous image from his curious friends. Kano continues to tease Yuito about his deep blush and the fact that he was startled enough to drop his phone. While Yuito struggles to maintain his composure, Suzuno notices the device on the floor and kindly reaches down to retrieve it. Yuito is instantly gripped by a sense of impending doom as he remembers the scandalous selfie still displayed on the screen. Desperate to prevent a massive misunderstanding, he frantically tries to stop Suzuno before she catches sight of the revealing photo. Yuito's panic reaches its peak when Suzuno picks up his phone, though she seems more confused than upset at first. To his shock, Suzuno discovers a Puricura sticker of Yuito and Kano together on the back of his device. Kano casually mentions that the photo was taken during their recent outing, further fueling the misunderstanding. While Yuito is relieved that the revealing selfie remained hidden, he realizes that the sticker has created a brand new problem for him to explain. Yuito frantically explains that the Puricura sticker found on his phone was something Kano forced him to do against his will. Despite his protests, Suzuno's brother maintains a skeptical and intimidating presence, while Kano continues to treat the situation as a joke. The tension finally breaks when Suzuno reveals that she isn't upset. Instead, she is genuinely happy to see them getting along. She concludes the interaction by noting how close the two of them have become, leaving Yuito flustered and at a loss for words. Suzuno's playful comment about Yuito and Kano looking like a couple leaves Yuito completely flustered and overthinking. While Yuito struggles to manage his racing heart, Kano only leans further into the teasing with a smug, knowing grin. However, the lighthearted atmosphere is suddenly shattered when Ayato is pushed past his limit by their closeness. Ayato erupts in a protective and terrifying rage, causing a paralyzed Yuito to scream in pure, unadulterated fear. Kano continues to push Yuito with increasingly suggestive and bold questions about their relationship. She mischievously hints that their intimacy might have already progressed further than a simple friendship. With a seductive smirk, she explicitly asks if they have already shared a kiss. Her forwardness leaves Yuito completely flustered as he struggles to respond to her scandalous suggestion. Kano's bold claims about the group's level of intimacy leave everyone at the table in a state of complete shock. The boys struggle to process her words as the teasing reaches a new and highly embarrassing peak. Suzuno's stunned silence adds to the heavy atmosphere created by her sister's scandalous suggestion. Unable to take any more, Ayato finally loses his cool and forcefully declares that they are absolutely not dating. Suzuno becomes deeply flustered and looks down in embarrassment after the conversation shifts toward the idea of physical intimacy. She softly clarifies that she never intended to kiss Ayato or engage in anything suggestive, trying to clear up the misunderstanding. Despite her shy denial, she remains visibly overwhelmed by the situation as she addresses Ayato directly. The group is left in an awkward silence as Suzuno's modest reaction highlights the complicated feelings shared between the childhood friends. Yuito struggles with the painful realization that Suzuno may have feelings for his older brother. Overwhelmed by his thoughts, he falls into a deep state of uncertainty regarding his next move. This emotional turmoil soon manifests physically as a thermometer confirms he is running a high fever. Now bedridden with the flu, Yuito is reminded that his condition is the result of getting caught in the rain the previous day. After getting caught in the rain, Yuito wakes up with a high fever, feeling frustrated that even his physical stamina is inferior to his brother Ayato's. His mother confirms he has the flu and tells him to rest, noting that his body finally gave out after yesterday's drenching. While bedridden, Yuito worries about his absence and decides to send a quick text to Kano to let her know he won't be at school. He is stunned when Kano reads the message instantly and immediately calls him back, revealing just how closely she has been waiting for his word. Yuito's condition worsens as his high fever makes his head feel heavy and his thoughts begin to cloud over. Kano realizes that Yuito is genuinely ill, noting that he is too weak to respond to her usual teasing with his typical flustered energy. Feeling the heavy toll of the flu, Yuito decides to cut the conversation short so he can focus on resting. The call ends with Kano falling into a silent, concerned mood, seemingly affected by seeing Yuito in such a vulnerable state. After the call ends, a feverish Yuito lies in bed, struggling to recall Kano's mysterious final words. He considers reaching out to Suzuno instead, but remembers with a sigh that Kano had previously deleted her number from his phone. As he reflects on their history, he notes how Suzuno has always remained remarkably obedient to her bossy older sister. His quiet morning is suddenly interrupted at 8:36 am by the unexpected sound of the doorbell ringing. Hearing the doorbell, a bedridden Yuito initially assumes it is either his mother or a routine delivery. He grows increasingly anxious as he hears footsteps approaching his room, realizing it doesn't sound like his mother. The door suddenly bursts open to reveal Kano, who apologizes for the delay while carrying a bag of supplies. She energetically announces that she has come to personally nurse him back to health, catching Yuito completely by surprise. Yuito is taken aback when Kano reveals she skipped her college classes just to stay and nurse him back to health. The situation takes a scandalous turn when Kano suddenly demands that he remove his pants and underwear immediately. As Yuito panics over her suggestive request, Kano realizes her phrasing was unclear and begins rummaging through her bag. Kano continues her aggressive nursing care, ignoring Yuito's protests as she prepares to administer his medicine. Weakened by his high fever, Yuito finds himself unable to effectively resist her bold and insistent demands. He is left feeling entirely vulnerable and exposed after finally succumbing to her overwhelming presence in his room. Kano watches him with a satisfied and mischievous smile, clearly reveling in her dominance over the helpless patient. Yuito panics over the possibility of his mother catching them together, but Kano reassures him that she is away on errands. She continues to tease him by boldly claiming she would admit to scandalous intentions if anyone were to walk in on them. Yuito attempts to dismiss her behavior as an over-the-top joke, but Kano leans in and asks if he truly believes she isn't being serious. The playful atmosphere suddenly turns tense as Kano stares at him with a heavy, intense expression, leaving Yuito frozen in shock. The tension between the two reaches a breaking point as Kano leans in and closes the final gap between them. Taking full control of the situation, she pins Yuito down on the bed, leaving him with no room to escape. Yuito is left in a state of total disbelief while Kano initiates a deeply intimate and unexpected moment. As he lies pinned beneath her, Yuito's mind races as he struggles to comprehend the shock of their sudden physical encounter. Yuito is consumed by a deep sense of guilt, feeling that he shouldn't be giving in while he still has feelings for Suzuno. His breathing becomes ragged as Kano's overwhelming presence and physical closeness push him to his breaking point. Kano whispers a bold suggestion for them to truly become one, further shattering Yuito's dwindling resolve. In a moment of total defeat, Yuito's thoughts drift back to Suzuno as he offers her a silent and pained apology. Yuito finally wakes up from his feverish sleep and finds Kano still sitting by his bedside. As he regains consciousness, a hazy memory of their intense earlier encounter begins to flood back to him. He vividly recalls the moment Kano leaned over him, bringing them dangerously close to an intimate kiss. Still feeling dazed, Yuito struggles to separate the shocking reality of the situation from what felt like a fever dream. Kano playfully probes Yuito about the dreams he had while he was unconscious. She informs him that he was repeatedly apologizing to Suzuno in his sleep, catching him off guard. Yuito quickly dismisses the incident as a strange dream to hide his growing embarrassment. While Kano prepares his meal, Yuito is left questioning if their earlier kiss was truly real or just a fever-induced fantasy. Yuito is relieved to conclude that the earlier intense encounter was nothing more than a fever dream. Kano continues to tease him about his medicine one last time before deciding it is time for her to head home. She bids him a friendly farewell, leaving Yuito alone to focus on his recovery. Outside in the night air, Suzuno calls out to her sister, ending the visit on a quiet and reflective note. As Yuito drifts through his fever, Kano's playful and aggressive nursing takes a much more serious and intimate turn. However, the heavy atmosphere is suddenly broken when Yuito begins to mutter incoherently in his sleep. Kano is left in total shock after hearing that Yuito is actually whispering a sincere and pained apology to Suzuno. The unexpected revelation leaves her in a stunned silence, realizing that Suzuno remains the only person truly on Yuito's mind. Suzuno asks about Kano's day, noting that her sister looks particularly exhausted from her recent activities. To lighten the mood, Suzuno shares gossip about a friend who successfully started dating the boy she liked. She explains that the situation was complicated because the boy originally had feelings for a different girl entirely. Suzuno reveals how her friend managed to win him over, eventually convincing the boy to confess his feelings to her instead. During dinner, Suzuno whispers a specific romantic strategy to her sister, leaving Kano deeply impressed by the tactic. With this new insight, Kano feels she finally understands how to proceed and begins forming a plan of her own. The two sisters finish their meal and part ways for the night, wishing each other a peaceful rest. Finally alone, Kano's playful mood vanishes as she stares intensely at her phone with a dark and determined expression. Kano touches Yuito's face, secretly reflecting on how their current bond is no longer enough to satisfy her. She decides she must take action to make him truly aware of her, regardless of the potential consequences. While acknowledging the risk, she worries that a single bold step could fundamentally change their relationship forever. Despite her lingering doubts, she steels her resolve and vows to see her plans through to the end. Kano stands alone, clutching her phone as she reflects on her intense feelings for Yuito. She decides she won't stop until she makes him hers completely, body and soul. Yuito returns to class, only to be immediately surrounded by his curious friends. The group begins pressing him for updates regarding his recent personal life. They specifically ask how things have progressed since their last encounter together. A confused Yuito struggles to understand exactly what situation they are referring to. Yuito's friends continue to pry, demanding to know the truth about his feelings for Kano. They openly accuse him of being dishonest, claiming his attraction to her is incredibly obvious to everyone. A red-faced Yuito frantically denies their claims, though his visible distress suggests otherwise. Despite his protests, the group remains completely unconvinced as they continue to mock his lack of transparency. Yuito's friends relentlessly tease him about his relationship with Kano, causing him to insist they are just like siblings. As the questioning becomes overwhelming, Yuito uses a notification from Kano as an excuse to make a quick escape. Kano waits patiently for him outside by her motorcycle, looking stylish as she passes the time on her phone. When Yuito finally catches up, he offers a nervous apology for his lateness and explains that his friends held him up. Yuito senses a shift in Kano's usual demeanor and questions her about what is actually going on. She remains mysterious about their destination, telling him he will find out where they are going once they arrive. Despite Yuito's nervous plea to avoid any strange locations, Kano drives with a determined focus toward a place she claims he already knows. The pair eventually arrives at a quiet, deserted playground, marking the end of their motorcycle ride. Yuito and Kano arrive at the playground, reflecting on the nostalgia of the place where the four childhood friends used to spend their time. They look back on their younger years, reminiscing about how much their lives and appearances have changed since they were children. The atmosphere shifts as Kano stops Yuito, expressing a sudden and serious desire to discuss something meaningful with him. As they walk together, she begins to open up by recounting a specific memory from her 6th grade year in elementary school. Yuito asks Kano if she remembers the time she transferred into his class, to which she immediately confirms. Yuito then reflects on his dark history from the 4th grade, a time when he decided to take matters into his own hands. He explains that his motivation was to save Kano from the severe bullying that had left her too afraid to attend school. Armed with nothing but a cleaning tool and pure determination, Yuito boldly confronted the bullies alone to protect her. Kano reveals that her special feelings for Yuito began when he tried to protect her during elementary school. She explains that his sincere effort to help her was the reason she started looking at him differently. Yuito is left speechless, stunned to learn that she has harbored these emotions for so long. Hesitantly, he asks her for clarification on whether she truly means her feelings are romantic. Kano clarifies that her feelings for Yuito are not just casual, but represent a genuine romantic love. The direct confession leaves Yuito completely stunned and struggling to process the sudden shift in their relationship. Kano acknowledges his feelings for Suzuno and reassures him that she isn't demanding an immediate choice between them. She concludes with a confident vow to win his heart, warning him to be prepared for her upcoming pursuit. Yuito is left stunned as he processes the incredible realization that Kano actually harbors romantic feelings for him. He finds the situation difficult to accept, as he always assumed she preferred high-achieving types like his older brother. Still feeling dazed from his illness, he questions whether this revelation is just another vivid hallucination caused by his fever. He pinches his cheek to test reality and realizes the physical pain confirms that the confession was entirely real. Yuito reflects on Kano's recent confession, troubled by how easily her words have influenced his emotions. Although he believes he likes Suzuno, his heart won't stop racing for Kano, leaving him overwhelmed with guilt and unable to concentrate. He views Kano as a perfect, high-achieving individual, convincing himself that someone ordinary like him is an unworthy match. His spiral of self-doubt is suddenly interrupted by a call from Kano, forcing him to face the reality he can no longer escape. Feeling unworthy of someone as beautiful as Kano, Yuito is startled when his phone begins to vibrate with an incoming call from her. He eventually answers the phone, feeling a wave of relief that she sounds like her usual, cheerful self. When Yuito asks about the purpose of her call, she initially teases him before revealing her true motive. Kano boldly confesses that she simply wanted to hear the voice of the guy she likes, leaving Yuito completely stunned. Yuito begs Kano to stop teasing him, but she playfully admits that her affection makes it impossible for her to resist. He realizes that she has become completely open about her feelings, no longer caring to hide her attraction toward him. Kano explains that since her confession is already out in the open, she has no reason to hold back anymore. She ends the call with a final warning, telling Yuito to be ready for how aggressively she plans to pursue him from now on. Yuito is left feeling deeply unsettled as he realizes that Kano is completely serious about her romantic pursuit. Meanwhile, Kano remains resolute in her goal, firmly vowing that she will definitely succeed in making him her own. Yuito is suddenly jolted when his bedroom door clicks open, causing him to fear that she has already arrived to follow through on her threat. However, the tension immediately breaks when he sees only his brother, who has merely stopped by to ask for help locating a dictionary. Yuito nervously hands over a dictionary to his brother, making a quick excuse to hide his internal panic. Once alone, he begins to spiral over the potential danger if his brother ever discovers Kano's romantic feelings for him. He envisions a violent, protective outburst from his brother, convinced that revealing the truth would lead to his own demise. Terrified by this imagined scenario, Yuito firmly resolves to keep their situation a secret at all costs. While walking through the school hallway, Yuito struggles to focus as memories of his intense encounter with Kano continue to distract him. Distracted by these thoughts, he accidentally sprains his finger and decides to skip his next class to clear his head. On his way out, he runs into Suzuno, who is dressed for her cooking class and looking equally preoccupied. The two share a brief, awkward moment of connection as they realize they have both suffered minor injuries while lost in thought. Distracted by thoughts of Kano, Yuito accidentally sprains his finger and heads to the nurse's office, where he unexpectedly encounters Suzuno. Finding the office empty, Suzuno kindly offers to bandage Yuito's injury despite nursing a minor burn of her own from cooking class. As they interact, Yuito observes her endearing clumsiness while wrestling with a heavy sense of guilt regarding his complicated feelings for Kano. When asked about her accident, Suzuno cheerfully explains that she burned herself while preparing the white sauce for a gratin dish. In the nurse's office, Yuito points out how frequently Suzuno gets burned during her cooking classes. Suzuno admits to her clumsy nature and expresses her deep admiration for her older sister, Kano. She enthusiastically confirms her strong bond with her sibling, praising Kano's talent and capability compared to her own. Suzuno then mentions Kano's unusually joyful mood from the day before, catching a nervous Yuito completely off guard. Yuito grows anxious that Kano's uncharacteristic happiness might accidentally reveal their secrets to his brother and Suzuno. To avoid suspicion, he quickly shifts the conversation as Suzuno prepares to return to her ongoing class. As she heads out, Yuito offers a final warning for her to stay alert and be careful. However, the notoriously clumsy girl immediately stumbles over an obstacle, causing Yuito to cry out in alarm. Yuito quickly catches Suzuno after she trips, but he immediately pulls away while offering a flustered apology for the sudden contact. Suzuno offers a warm smile and thanks him for the help before preparing to head back to her cooking class. As they part ways, Yuito tells her to be more careful, and she cheerfully agrees as she walks off. Left alone, Yuito's expression turns serious as he confirms a troubling realization to himself. Yuito faces a painful reality as he realizes that Suzuno doesn't view him as a potential romantic partner. He compares himself to his more successful brother, clenching his fist in frustration at the perceived gap between them. As the school bell rings, he stands alone in the empty hallway, feeling dejected after his interaction with Suzuno. His moment of gloomy reflection is suddenly cut short when a familiar voice calls out his name from behind. Kano pulls Yuito close and enthusiastically encourages him to head out with her. She justifies her forward behavior by claiming she is simply acting like a girl deeply in love. Yuito skeptically observes that she uses this romantic excuse quite frequently to get her way. Internally, he reflects that while she claims to be a maiden, her methods are actually quite aggressive. Yuito tries to protest against Kano's physical closeness, but she quickly shuts down his argument by questioning if he truly dislikes it. Realizing that arguing with her is a lost cause, Yuito relents as she leans in even closer to him. The situation takes an unexpected turn when Kano begins to sniff him intently, catching him completely off guard. A deeply embarrassed Yuito panics in silence, struggling to process why she is smelling him so closely. Yuito and Kano enjoy a festive outing together at a local Christmas market. Kano stops to admire a listeter, which she describes as a traditional Croatian ginger cookie. She expresses her appreciation for how cute the heart-shaped treat looks, but finds the price tag quite high. Yuito watches her silently, taking note of her genuine interest in the expensive souvenir. Yuito buys the expensive listeter cookie and presents it to Kano as a thoughtful Christmas gift. Kano is visibly stunned and deeply moved by the unexpected gesture, blushing intensely as she accepts the gift. She softly thanks him, cherishing the heart-shaped treat while a hidden meaning lingers behind her smile. Kano playfully notes that Yuito seems unaware of what giving such a traditional cookie truly represents. Kano confronts Yuito with a threatening aura, claiming she can detect the scent of another girl on him. Yuito panics as he recalls a recent accidental encounter with Suzuno, realizing that Kano's sharp sense of smell has picked up on it. Despite his mounting fear, Yuito desperately tries to deflect her suspicions by suggesting she is just imagining things. Kano dismisses his excuse and directly names Suzuno as the source of the scent, leaving Yuito paralyzed by the realization that he's been caught. Kano confronts Yuito with a terrifying aura, accusing him of being dishonest about his recent interaction with Suzuno. A panicked Yuito tries to set the record straight, explaining that he only held Suzuno to prevent her from falling. Kano continues to press him with suggestive accusations of flirting until Yuito frantically insists that the encounter was purely accidental. Suddenly dropping her anger, Kano accepts his explanation and catches Yuito off guard with an affectionate, tight embrace. Kano continues her tight embrace, privately vowing to mark Yuito with her own scent to erase any trace of another girl. Yuito becomes increasingly panicked as a crowd gathers, feeling the intense pressure of so many people watching them. He eventually pulls away from the public display and hopefully asks if her affection means she has finally forgiven him. Kano dismisses his logic with a cheerful smile, clarifying that her feelings and her forgiveness are two entirely different things. Kano drags Yuito along to their next destination, playfully promising to save his punishment for a later time. The pair eventually arrives at a cinema to watch a movie that Kano had been eager to see. Once settled, Kano dramatically increases the tension by asking if he would have preferred going to a love hotel instead. Yuito is immediately thrown into a total panic, frantically denying her scandalous suggestion while she enjoys his reaction. After entering the crowded theater, Yuito and Kano take their seats among many other couples. Yuito becomes increasingly self-conscious about the intensely romantic environment they have stepped into. Noticing his discomfort, Kano leans in close and looks at him with a provocative expression. She teasingly notes that from an outsider's perspective, they appear to be in a romantic relationship themselves. Yuito expresses his discomfort with the romantic setting, suggesting they merely look like siblings to those around them. Disagreeing with his assessment, a determined Kano insists that they undeniably resemble a genuine couple. She suddenly takes his hand in a firm, public display of affection to prove her point, leaving Yuito in total shock. Overwhelmed by the boldness of the gesture, Yuito is left feeling intensely embarrassed as Kano watches his reaction. Yuito and Kano leave the theater in high spirits after enjoying a light-hearted movie together. Their festive date takes an abrupt turn when they unexpectedly run into Suzuno and Ayato. Both pairs are left in a state of mutual shock as they suddenly find themselves face to face. The unexpected encounter immediately creates a thick, awkward atmosphere among the four childhood friends. The sudden encounter between the two pairs outside the cinema immediately creates a tense and awkward atmosphere. Yuito is surprised by his brother's presence, especially since he assumed Ayato had club activities that day. Kano realizes their group is becoming a distraction to the other patrons in the busy theater lobby. To resolve the situation, she cheerfully suggests they all head outside to continue their conversation away from the crowd. Yuito and Kano's accidental encounter with the other pair leads the group to step away from the crowd. While the girls go to wash their hands, Ayato takes the opportunity to confront Yuito in private. He notes that the current semester is quickly coming to an end. Ayato then questions whether it is appropriate for Yuito to continue spending so much time with Kano right now. Yuito retorts that Ayato should also be home studying since his own club activities were cancelled for the day. The brothers engage in a heated standoff, with neither willing to back down from their sudden and intense argument. The tension remains high as they finish up in the restroom, both clearly irritated by the unexpected confrontation. Suzuno notices the heavy atmosphere between them and approaches with a worried look, wondering what caused such sudden hostility. One of the muscular strangers suddenly reaches out and grabs Kano by the shoulder, catching her off guard. Startled by the aggressive move, she lets out a sharp cry of alarm that immediately draws attention. Yuito watches in frozen shock, paralyzed by the sight of the massive hand gripping his friend. The situation turns instantly dangerous as the harassment of the two girls escalates right before the brothers' eyes. The situation escalates into physical violence as one of the strangers attempts to strike. Before the blow can land, Yuito suddenly intervenes, successfully intercepting the man's arm. Kano is left in a state of total shock, staring at him as she struggles to process his unexpected bravery. Her disbelief highlights the gravity of the confrontation as Yuito prepares to protect them both. Yuito's heart races as he physically steps in to shield the girls from the aggressive strangers. He firmly grips the man's arm, demanding that they release Kano immediately. While at a cinema, a young man and his two female companions are suddenly confronted and blocked by two large, intimidating men. Stepping forward to protect one of the girls, the young man bravely intervenes and demands that the aggressors release her. Despite his visible nerves and the looming presence of the two muscle-bound strangers, he stands his ground to face the threat. Realizing the danger, he urges his companion to flee with the other girl while he stays behind to buy them enough time to escape. While visiting a cinema, Yuito and his companions, Kano and Suzuno, are suddenly blocked by two imposing men. The intimidating duo looms over the group, creating a tense standoff in the middle of the shop. Refusing to back down, Yuito steps forward to protect Kano and demands that the men release her. Fearing for the girl's safety, he urges them to escape while he stays behind to buy them enough time to flee. To Yuito's confusion, the two men burst into laughter instead of attacking. They reveal themselves to be Kano's acquaintances and begin teasing her about the little knight who has once again rushed to her rescue. Kano proudly confirms that Yuito is indeed a very reliable protector, much to his shock. Later, as the group sits together, a flustered Yuito realizes his misunderstanding and feels completely embarrassed by his dramatic rescue attempt. Kano clarifies that the intimidating men are actually friendly exchange students and Japan enthusiasts, despite their scary exterior. Realizing his heroic intervention was entirely unnecessary, Yuito becomes overwhelmed by deep embarrassment over his mistake. Meanwhile, Suzuno notices that Ayato is visibly shaken by the situation and tries to find out what is bothering him. Avoiding the question, Ayato dismisses her concern and abruptly announces his departure, leaving Suzuno bewildered by his sudden exit. As Ayato abruptly leaves, a confused Yuito wonders about the relationship between their companions, while Kano warmly thanks him for his earlier protective actions. Despite the misunderstanding, Yuito remains firm in his resolve, declaring that he would have truly risked his life if the situation had been a genuine threat. Moved by his selflessness yet deeply concerned for his safety, Kano reaches out and firmly grasps his hand with a solemn expression. She gently urges him to prioritize his own well-being, reminding him of the dangerous reality he would have faced if the men had actually been dangerous. Overwhelmed by emotion, Kano tearfully expresses her fear of seeing anyone get hurt, leading a remorseful Yuito to hold her hand and apologize for his recklessness. Some time later, a cheerful Yuito is walking home with a new book when he is surprised to run into Kano and an unfamiliar companion. The two share a brief moment acknowledging how often they have been seeing each other lately, though Yuito finds their current encounter unexpected. Intrigued by the person standing beside her, Yuito asks about the woman's identity, prompting Kano to realize that her friend and Yuito are complete strangers. Kano introduces her friend Meo-san to Yuito, revealing that she is a senior at their school and the former student council president. Yuito is immediately struck by Meo-san's beauty as she politely greets him, welcoming him as her junior. The mood shifts when Kano checks her phone and informs Meo-sen that her attempt to call someone was unsuccessful. Meo-sen reveals her dilemma, explaining that she has an upcoming blind date, but one of the male participants is suddenly unable to attend. Kano introduces Yuito to her friend Meo-san, a refined senior and former student council president. Yuito is immediately struck by her beauty and polite demeanor as they exchange greetings. The atmosphere turns serious when Meo-san reveals a sudden problem with an upcoming blind date she is organizing. She explains that one of the male participants unexpectedly canceled, leaving them short-handed. The tension breaks briefly when Meo-san receives a notification that a replacement has already been found. She announces that the new participant is a man named Kuzuhara, a name that immediately catches Yuito's attention. Upon hearing the name, Kano's expression becomes noticeably strained. She identifies Kuzuhara as a student from the economics department and the tennis club, admitting with visible discomfort that she is already familiar with him. As Kano reflects on her past unpleasant encounters with Kuzuhara, Meo-san worries about being unable to refuse the guy due to a lack of male participants. Determined to help, Yuito suddenly intervenes and shocks Kano by volunteering to join the blind date himself. Meo-san remains hesitant to accept the offer, pointing out the potential issues since he is still a high school student. Undeterred, Yuito confidently argues that simply changing his outfit will be enough to prevent anyone from noticing his real age. Meo-san playfully teases Yuito about his desire to protect Kano-san. Highly embarrassed, Yuito tries to hide his true intentions by claiming he only wants to gain more social experience. Appreciating his resolve, Meo-san tells him not to be shy and praises him for acting like a mature man. Her encouragement only leaves Yuito feeling even more flustered. Realizing the sacrifice Yuito is willing to make, Kano-san gazes at him with deep gratitude and affection. Yuito struggles to find his words as the romantic tension between them peaks. Finally, Meo-sen breaks the silence by apologizing for the interruption and suggesting they depart. Still visibly blushing, the two agree and prepare to head out together. The blind date begins at a restaurant where a guest named Rio introduces herself and expresses her fondness for younger men. Following the plan, Yuito introduces himself as a first-year university student, inwardly marveling at the fact that he is actually maintaining the deception. To further the ruse, Yuito wears an outfit chosen by Kano and Meo while carefully sticking to non-alcoholic tea to avoid exposing his true age. Despite his efforts to blend in, Yuito becomes visibly restless and uneasy as he watches Kano engage in a lively conversation with another male guest. Ryo catches Yuito completely off guard by teasing him about how long he has been staring at Kano during their meeting. Shocked by the sudden call-out, a flustered Yuito realizes he hasn't been nearly as discreet about his feelings as he intended. Ryo continues her playful interrogation, pointing out that his fixed gaze was incredibly obvious to everyone present. Completely mortified, Yuito spirals into a panic as he realizes his hidden focus on Kano is no longer a secret. Ryo inquires about Yuito and Kano's relationship and is intrigued to learn that the two are actually close childhood friends. Finding his awkwardness endearing, Ryo observes that Yuito appears completely out of his element in a social setting like a blind date. She continues to tease him, playfully pointing out that his discomfort and lack of experience are incredibly obvious to everyone present. Humbled by her accuracy, a flustered Yuito is forced to admit that his thoughts and emotions are indeed very easy to read. During the date, Ryo leans in and whispers a highly personal question about Yuito's lack of experience, catching him completely off guard. His intense, flustered reaction immediately confirms her suspicions, leading Ryo to find his innocence endearing as she continues to tease him. She then makes a bold and suggestive proposition, offering to be the one to help him graduate from his status as a virgin. Completely overwhelmed by her directness, Yuito is left in a state of utter shock, his mind reeling from the unexpected and daring turn in the conversation. Witnessing Ryo's bold and suggestive advances toward Yuito, Kano's expression turns terrifyingly dark as she realizes the situation has escalated. Overwhelmed by jealousy, she grips her glass until it begins to crack, silently declaring that this encounter has officially become a declaration of war. Meanwhile, Yuito remains in a state of total panic, completely overwhelmed by Ryo's direct and provocative proposition. Despite his obvious distress, Ryo continues to flirt with him, unaware of the intense wrath brewing from the sidelines. Taking her teasing to the extreme, Ryo leans in with a bold and suggestive offer to help Yuito graduate from his innocence, leaving him in a state of absolute shock. Witnessing the provocative move from across the table, Kano's jealousy reaches a terrifying peak as she silently declares war on her rival while nearly shattering her glass. Struggling to maintain his composure and save face, a flustered Yuito quickly tries to brush off the heavy comment, pleading with Ryo to stop making such intense jokes. Caught off guard by his defensive reaction, Ryo appears genuinely bewildered by his dismissal, seemingly unaware of the chaotic emotional storm her words have triggered. Ryo continues her aggressive flirting, making Yuito feel increasingly overwhelmed by her persistent and physical advances. Before the situation can escalate further, Kano suddenly intervenes by grabbing Yuito's shoulder, appearing behind him in an instant. Stunned by her lightning-fast movement, Yuito is left bewildered, struggling to understand how she managed to reach him so quickly. A tense standoff ensues as Kano claims she was merely helping a troubled friend, while Ryo dismissively warns her not to be an annoying distraction. The atmosphere at the dinner table turns electric as Kano and Ryo engage in a fierce, silent standoff over Yuito. Sandwiched between his two companions, Yuito becomes increasingly overwhelmed as both girls crowd into his personal space. Seeking an advantage, Ryo initiates a bold move by attempting to hand-feed Yuito a piece of food she claims is delicious. In an immediate counterattack, Kano offers him a different dish she insists he prefers, turning the meal into a competitive battle for his affection. Feeling suffocated by the intense competition, Yuito begs the girls to give him some personal space. He remains completely frozen and overwhelmed as both Kano and Ryo continue to aggressively vie for his attention. While Meo finds the chaos amusing, the other male guests seethe with envy over Yuito's sudden popularity. Kano eventually leans in to corner him, pressuring a drained Yuito to finally admit that he prefers her over her rival. In an effort to win him over, Ryo pulls a flustered Yuito into a tight, intimate embrace, offering to dote on him and make him feel special. Caught completely off guard by the sudden physical contact, Yuito finds himself overwhelmed and deeply embarrassed by the intense sensation. Before things can go any further, an enraged Kano suddenly snatches Yuito away, accusing Ryo of causing him distress and demanding she stop. While Yuito finds himself accidentally pressed against Kano instead, a defiant Ryo fires back, accusing Kano of being the one truly interfering with the date. Ryo attempts to brush Kano aside by labeling her as nothing more than a childhood friend, causing a defiant Kano to pull Yuito even closer and refuse to back down. Physically and mentally overwhelmed by the intense struggle for his affection, a flustered Yuito helplessly realizes he has reached his absolute breaking point. The extreme pressure and physical closeness of the two girls finally push him too far, triggering a sudden and massive comical nosebleed that erupts between the rivals. This dramatic and unexpected outburst leaves both Kano and Ryo in a state of complete shock, ending their competition in a moment of bewildered silence. Yuito wakes up alone in an unfamiliar hotel room, feeling disoriented as he struggles to piece together the final moments of the evening. He eventually recalls being physically crushed between the competing affections of Kano and Ryo, which ultimately caused him to lose consciousness. Mortified by the memory of his massive, involuntary nosebleed, he deeply regrets his total lack of composure during the date. Overwhelmed by shame, he hides his face in his hands and agonizes over how his extreme reaction made his lack of experience painfully obvious to everyone. Yuito wakes up in a strange room and is horrified to find himself nearly undressed, wearing only his underpants. Panic sets in as he frantically looks around, questioning where his clothes went and how he arrived at this mysterious location. After spotting his phone on a nightstand, he decides to check his GPS to confirm where he is currently staying. To his complete shock and dismay, the map reveals his location to be a love hotel, leaving him in a state of total disbelief. Overwhelmed by sheer panic, Yuito realizes he has no memory of what happened after he passed out at the blind date. His spiraling thoughts are suddenly interrupted when he notices the sound of someone walking into the room. To his astonishment, Kano steps into view wearing a bathrobe while drying her freshly washed hair, cheerfully greeting him as he wakes up. Struck by her flushed and remarkably radiant appearance, Yuito is left frozen in shock, questioning what could have possibly happened between them while he was unconscious. Upon waking up in a love hotel, Yuito is shocked to find a radiant-looking Kano standing before him in a bathrobe. He quickly realizes their suggestive location as Kano casually reflects on the difficult events of the previous night. Noticing his own state of undress, he becomes increasingly panicked about what might have happened between them while he was unconscious. Overwhelmed by shame and confusion, Yuito drops into a deep, formal bow on the bed, leaving Kano completely bewildered by his intense reaction. Clarifying the situation, Kano explains that they took refuge at the hotel because her clothes were ruined during the earlier commotion. The mess was caused by Yuito's intense nosebleed, which left her original outfit completely stained and unwearable in public. She further reveals that Mayo-sen eventually came to their aid, bringing along a fresh set of clothes to replace her soiled ones. While Kano recounts the story with visible embarrassment, an exhausted Yuito remains nearly lifeless as he recovers from the night's events. Still anxious about their surroundings, Yuito begins to worry about the potential for a public scandal. He expresses concern over the social consequences of being seen at a love hotel with a high school student. Faced with the gravity of their situation, he wonders how they would ever explain themselves if caught. He ultimately asks Kano what she would do if their presence at the hotel were actually discovered by others. Striving to clarify his feelings, a flustered Yuito quickly assures Kano that he doesn't actually dislike the idea of them being together. He admits that the thought of marriage simply hadn't crossed his mind yet, given their current situation. Despite his honest response, Yuito immediately begins to second-guess his own words as his embarrassment grows. Caught in the heat of the moment, he finds himself stumbling through his explanation while trying to process the weight of Kano's bold suggestion. Kano acknowledges that her previous suggestion was sudden, but she leaves Yuito stunned by declaring that she will soon be the only one by his side. Leaning in close, she whispers a firm reminder for him never to forget her claim, further intensifying the romantic tension between them. Overwhelmed by her directness and unable to handle the heat of the moment, a flustered Yuito abruptly announces his departure to take a shower. He hurriedly rushes away in a panic, leaving a silent Kano sitting alone on the bed to process the aftermath of her bold confession. Kano makes a bold declaration about a future together with marriage in mind, leaving Yuito visibly overwhelmed and flustered. When pressed about his feelings, Yuito clarifies that while he hasn't thought about marriage before, he doesn't actually dislike the idea of them being together. Emboldened by his admission, Kano asserts her permanent place in his life, prompting a panicked and blushing Yuito to flee to the shower. Left alone, Kano reflects on her successful strategy with a satisfied smile, grateful that her risky gamble has finally made him truly aware of her feelings. A few weeks after the events at the hotel, school life resumes, and Yuito proves his academic prowess by once again securing the top spot in the class rankings. Despite his stellar performance, Yuito chooses to downplay his success by telling a fellow student that he only placed 5th, much to the surprise of his peers. Word of his high standing spreads quickly, leading a panicked classmate to beg Yuito to swap exams with him to avoid his mother's wrath over his own poor grades. Unmoved by the absurd request, Yuito flatly refuses the swap, while his classmates continue to gossip about his consistent streak of first-place finishes. Reflecting on his recent academic progress, Yuito notes how much his self-esteem has improved. He feels significantly more positive and confident compared to his past self. With the stressful exam period finally over, a classmate suggests an immediate celebratory trip to the local pool. The idea is met with quick and enthusiastic approval from the group. One classmate is particularly excited for the official start of summer break. He eagerly views the upcoming pool outing as the perfect chance to socialize and flirt with girls. To wrap up their school day, the group finalizes their plans. They decide to head home briefly to prepare and change before meeting back up for their first summer activity. After returning home, Yuito prepares for the group's pool outing by locating his swimming trunks. While heading out, he reflects on how long it has been since his last visit to the pool and dismisses his classmates' jokes about meeting girls. His thoughts are suddenly interrupted when he is startled by Kano, who appears unexpectedly to greet him. She warmly explains her desire to hang out now that his exams are finished and he finally has some free time. Yuito informs Kano that he is already committed to a pool trip with his male friends, making him unavailable to hang out with her. This news triggers a sharp wave of jealousy in Kano, who suspiciously questions whether any other girls will be joining the outing. After a panicked Yuito assures her that the group consists only of guys she has already met, Kano's mood instantly brightens. Seizing the moment, she cheerfully announces that she will be tagging along, leaving a stunned Yuito completely speechless. Kano asks Yuito for permission to tag along on his pool trip with a deceptively sweet smile. Beneath her innocent exterior, however, she is secretly driven by intense jealousy and possessiveness. Driven by an intense and dark aura, Kano pressures Yuito for permission to join his pool trip, leaving him with little room to refuse. Resigned to the situation, Yuito reluctantly agrees to let her tag along and prepares to break the news to his unsuspecting friends. Kano's menacing demeanor quickly vanishes as she joyfully announces they must go buy her a new swimsuit right away. She enthusiastically enlists Yuito's help for the shopping trip, making it clear that he has no choice but to accompany her as her personal consultant. While heading home to retrieve her swimsuit, Kano catches Yuito by surprise by leading him all the way into her private bedroom. Yuito becomes incredibly flustered as he realizes where he is, having only planned to wait for her at the front entrance. Seeing her personal space triggers a nostalgic memory of the two of them frequently playing together in this very room as young children. Despite their long history, Yuito feels a wave of modern-day anxiety, noting that he has intentionally held back from such intimacy since entering middle school. Kano playfully teases Yuito, accusing him of being a pervert who gets excited by the prospect of handling her personal swimwear. An embarrassed Yuito frantically denies the claim, though he can't help but sigh at the awkward position she has put him in. His mind begins to wander as he accidentally imagines her in a bikini, forcing him to quickly snap himself back to reality. Determined to end the awkwardness, he shakes off his intrusive thoughts and resolves to retrieve the swimsuit as quickly as possible. While searching for the swimsuit, Yuito is mortified to find himself looking through Kano's lingerie drawer instead. He accuses her of orchestrating the embarrassing situation, while she playfully teases him about the rare opportunity to see her private things. After Yuito indignantly refuses to help any further, Kano finally retrieves her swimwear and prepares to show him. He is then caught completely off guard when she emerges wearing the exact same swimsuit from a past encounter. Kano warmly reveals that she specifically wanted to wear the swimsuit Yuito chose for her during their time together. Her sincere confession leaves Yuito visibly flustered and blushing. Caught off guard by her sweetness, a deeply embarrassed Yuito accidentally admits that he had indeed been hoping she would wear that particular outfit. Yuito immediately panics as he realizes the weight of his words, while a delighted Kano reacts to his rare display of honesty with wide-eyed excitement. In a desperate attempt to backtrack, Yuito frantically explains that his comment wasn't weird, only to realize that his rambling is making him sound more sincere than ever. Noticing Yuito's transparent behavior, Kano teases him for trying too hard to hide his true feelings. She mocks his obvious anticipation, accurately pointing out how much he was looking forward to seeing her. Despite his flustered denials, Kano playfully promises to show off her swimsuit as much as he wants during their trip. Ultimately, Yuito is left completely overwhelmed and defeated by her relentless and bold flirting. Yuito and Kano finally arrive at the meeting spot to join their group of waiting friends. They offer a friendly greeting and apologize for the delay, noting that it has been quite some time since the group last met. The friends are immediately captivated by Kano's radiant appearance, leaving them completely mesmerized by her beauty. Taking advantage of his help, Kano asks a strained Yuito to hold her surprisingly heavy bag while she searches for her purse. Kano surprises Yuito by clinging tightly to his arm, causing him to blush intensely from the sudden display of affection. Their friends watch the pair with dark, looming expressions, clearly feeling envious of the duo's obvious closeness. Realizing the mounting pressure from his peers, a startled Yuito becomes even more flustered, while Kano remains blissfully cheerful. In a desperate attempt to diffuse the tension, he frantically pushes the group forward, insisting that they need to hurry to their destination. Kano is thrilled by the enthusiastic reception from the group, who shower her with praise for her choice of swimwear. The guys find themselves completely overwhelmed by her beauty, declaring her the absolute best as she confidently poses in her new swimsuit. Amidst the shower of compliments, Kano turns her full attention to Yuito and asks him directly for his personal thoughts on her look. Still stunned by her appearance and the sudden spotlight, a flustered Yuito can only offer a confused response as he struggles to process the scene. Kano presents herself in her new swimsuit and asks for Yuito's opinion, leaving him completely stunned and blushing. Even though he has seen the outfit before, Yuito is overwhelmed by her beauty as his heart begins to pound uncontrollably. He soon notices that every other man at the pool is equally captivated by her, making him even more self-conscious. Noticing the obvious tension, their friends decide to leave them alone, encouraging the pair to enjoy the rest of their outing together. After arriving at the pool, Yuito's friends pull him aside for a private meeting, much to his and Kano's confusion. While Yuito assumes they are simply there for a post-exam celebration, his friends reveal they have a much more specific objective in mind. Driven by their desire for romance, the group aggressively declares that their true goal for the outing is to successfully pick up girls. They express extreme desperation, fearing they will only attract other men interested in Kano if they don't take action, leaving Yuito stunned by their intensity. After their friends intentionally leave them alone, Yuito and Kano head to the lazy river to find some peace and relaxation. Floating together, Kano encourages Yuito to enjoy his summer break to the fullest before his entrance exams begin next year. Yuito agrees, but jokingly asks her not to bring up stressful topics while they are trying to have a good time. In a daring attempt to apologize for her teasing, Kano makes an extremely bold and suggestive proposition that leaves Yuito utterly speechless. Following a chaotic moment at the pool that leaves Yuito slightly dazed, Kano shifts the conversation toward his academic future. Yuito explains that he has a summer assignment requiring a college campus visit, though he hasn't settled on a specific location yet. Sensing a perfect chance to spend more time together, Kano invites him to tour her university and offers to show him around personally. Yuito gratefully accepts the invitation, and the pair shifts their focus back to the fun by heading toward a nearby water slide. Arriving at the top of a massive water slide, the group prepares for a high-speed descent. Kano excitedly discusses the thrill of the ride, noting that lying back increases the speed and level of fun. When she playfully asks if he is nervous and offers to accompany him, a flustered Yuito stubbornly insists on handling the ride alone. Emerging from the splash at the bottom, Yuito is left visibly shaken and breathless by the slide's unexpectedly intense velocity. After the intense water slide ride, a playful Kano laughs at Yuito's rattled and dazed state. She then confronts him with a startling sight, appearing to have lost her swimsuit top during the high-speed descent. Noticing his extreme physical reaction, she teases him for trembling while the other pool-goers watch the scene in disbelief. Yuito is left completely paralyzed by the bold and unexpected display, bringing their summer outing to a shocking cliffhanger. Yuito is horrified by the display and urgently pleads with Kano to cover her exposed chest immediately. Initially confused and teasing, Kano finally realizes that her swimsuit top has indeed come off during the slide. Realizing her extreme carelessness in front of everyone, she becomes deeply flustered and embarrassed. Letting out a loud scream, she desperately tries to cover herself as she sinks back into the water to hide. Yuito successfully locates the missing swimsuit top floating in the water after the accidental mishap on the slide. He quickly assists a humiliated and shivering Kano in putting it back on before leading her out of the public pool area. While recovering at the water's edge, a deeply embarrassed Kano defends herself, insisting that she had not been careless with her outfit. When Yuito observes her rare moment of vulnerability, Kano snaps back defensively, reminding him how mortifying it is to be exposed in public. After helping Kano with her wardrobe malfunction, Yuito tries to smooth things over by noting how rare it was to see her so flustered. Kano quickly regains her confidence and boldly claims that she isn't embarrassed to be seen in such a state by the person she loves. She takes her teasing even further by suggesting she actually wants to show him more, leaving a mortified Yuito pleading for mercy. Left with a pounding heart, Yuito struggles to recover from the shock, realizing that her directness was far more intense than her usual playful antics. Kano suddenly stands up with a mischievous smirk, catching a startled Yuito completely off guard. She enthusiastically suggests they tackle the water slide one more time, much to Yuito's disbelief following her recent mishap. Despite his hesitation, she insists she will be fine, but asks him to carefully inspect her swimsuit straps as a precaution. Overwhelmed by nerves and blushing deeply, Yuito reluctantly agrees to the request while struggling to keep his heart from racing. Kano playfully warns Yuito not to get carried away while checking her swimsuit, leading to another defensive and flustered outburst from him. Despite the awkward start, the pair spends the entire afternoon enjoying the pool together and losing themselves in the various water activities. As the day comes to an end, Kano suggests it is time to head home, prompting Yuito to look around for their missing companions. They eventually locate their friends slumped against a wall, looking entirely dejected after their failed attempts to meet girls during the outing. Yuito and Kano find their friends in a deeply gloomy state following their failed attempts to pick up girls at the pool. The group reveals that their friend Sho has had a girlfriend the entire time, a betrayal that has left them feeling completely devastated. Noticing their intense resentment toward the lone traitor, a concerned Yuito asks if they actually resorted to physical violence. While the friends deny attacking him, Yuito is left stunned by the revelation, having been entirely unaware of his close friend's secret relationship. Sho is left in despair after his girlfriend caught him trying to flirt with other girls at the pool, leaving his relationship in jeopardy. Feeling responsible for the mess, the other friends decide to throw a consolation party and beg Yuito to join them. Kano encourages Yuito to go and cherish his male friendships, leading him to reluctantly agree to the gathering. Despite his decision, Yuito is filled with a sense of dread, fearing that the upcoming party will only result in pure chaos. Sho tearfully thanks his friends and leaves to apologize to his girlfriend, hoping to salvage their relationship. The remaining group members feel a sense of relief after successfully calming their friend down from his emotional breakdown. While they wait and pray for a positive outcome for Sho, the conversation takes an unexpected and personal turn. His friends suddenly corner a flustered Yuito, demanding to know when he plans to finally start a romantic relationship with Kano. As the conversation turns toward his romantic interests, Yuito's friends bluntly ask if there is someone else he likes. This direct question catches him completely off guard, triggering a massive and visible wave of embarrassment. Yuito turns beet red and begins sweating profusely while struggling to maintain his composure under their scrutiny. Completely overwhelmed by the inquiry, he remains frozen in a state of sheer panic as he fails to find an answer. Pressed by his friends to reveal his secret crush, a hesitant Yuito finally gives in. He admits that the person he is interested in is actually Suzuno, much to their surprise. The group is stunned by the revelation, immediately identifying Suzuno as the younger sister of their beautiful upperclassman, Kano. They quickly realize the complicated nature of his feelings. Playfully teasing him about the light novel-style love triangle, his friends demand to know what he finds so appealing about the younger Yuuki sister. Yuito describes Suzuno as a petite, cute, and exceptionally kind person who is a bit air-headed. His friends agree that she is undeniably charming, leaving a flustered Yuito to laugh off the awkward situation. While out at a restaurant with his friends, Yuito finds himself overwhelmed by a sudden wave of internal anxiety. He begins to compare his own feelings for Suzuno with the intense affection Kano has consistently shown him. Visibly conflicted, he clenches his fist as he grapples with the growing emotional confusion in his heart. Ultimately, Yuito is forced to re-examine his true motives and questions whether he actually likes Suzuno after all.